The Billionaire's Flame. An Alpha Billionaire Romance. By Michelle Love. Seeking the Flame. Deanna.
That was the last of it. Deanna Williams set down the last box full of her belongings. It had been a long few weeks as she packed up her old life into boxes and moved to a new city. A new beginning. Just months after finishing up her college diploma in journalism, Deanna was offered a job at a small magazine in New York City. As a true country girl from Austin, Texas, she had always dreamed of making it to the big city. There was nothing she enjoyed more than writing, so journalism was her ticket out of this dead-end town. Only a few days after learning that she had gotten the job, she was waving goodbye to her family and friends from the window of her old, rusted Ford and making her way east. Her parents had been sad to see her go, and she would miss them. Unlike so many of her friends growing up, she was an only child. She remembered wishing for a sibling all her life, but she never got one. It made it even harder for her to go, knowing that it meant that their first and only child was leaving them. All three teared up as they hugged each other. Her mother held her close, not wanting to let go just yet. Eventually they separated, and Deanna was released into the world alone. A lovely, older woman, Jessica, had allowed her to use an apartment just blocks away from her new office. It was quite small, with one bedroom, a kitchen and bathroom, but it was homey. It was also about as big as she could afford by herself. Deanna got right to work unpacking, and it was time to put everything in its proper place. She couldn't stand the clutter. Once it was all tidy, she sat back on her single bed and took in her new surroundings. But moving into a new house must have really taken a toll on her, because her head fell closer and closer to her pillow. She soon found her gaze blurring as she drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the first day at her new job and the wonders of New York City. The next morning, she awoke to the blaring of her alarm clock. Rubbing her eyes sleepily, she glanced over to check the time. It was already 7 o'clock. Only half an hour until she needed to leave, if she was going to be on time for her first day at the magazine. Her slender figure darted around the room, frantically searching for everything she would need. Luckily, she had already learned to be incredibly organized during college, as a result of her frequent sleep-ins. Her outfit was already carefully laid out on her desk, a well-fitted white blouse with a navy blazer and black pencil skirt. Perfect, she thought, as she jumped into the shower to wash off the previous day's sweat and dirt. Drying herself off quickly, she slipped into her clothes. Giving herself a last look in the mirror, she decided it best to have her long blonde locks tied back in a ponytail before she rushed out the door and made her way to the office. Dodging bodies on the pavement, she walked quickly through the crowd the few blocks to her building. She took a second to look at the exterior of the skyscraper she would now be working in. It was gray and dull, with tiny windows peering into the dank office cubicles. It was not exactly what she had pictured. Having only spoken to her employers over Skype, she had not yet seen any of the office at all. But from the sound of the magazine she was writing for, Inside Finance NYC, she had imagined something a little less decrepit. Nevertheless, she didn't care where she worked. Being a journalist in New York was her dream, and she had finally made it a reality. Taking the elevator up to the 12th floor, she crammed in with at least 15 other people heading to their jobs. Slowly the elevator cleared, each floor removing more people left until she was alone. The doors opened at the 12th floor and she reluctantly stepped out, her nerves beginning to set in. There was just one singular door before her. Inside Finance Inc., it read. This must be the place, she thought to herself. With a deep breath, she reached for the handle and opened the door to her new start. She almost collided straight into a young man, about to walk out of the same door. He stumbled back awkwardly and shook his head before looking at her for the first time. He was about the same age as her, in his early 20s. Her eyes were drawn to his handsome face, with his strong masculine jaw dusted with dark stubble. A stylish pair of black rims framed his hazel eyes. He was really attractive to her, in a nerdy sort of way. He stood for a moment, awestruck by the blonde beauty who had wandered through the doors of the office. It was silent for a moment before she spoke. "Hey, sorry," she apologized. He fumbled the small stack of papers held firmly in his hand. "Hi, I'm Jacob." He stuck out a hand for her to shake it politely. They exchanged pleasantries, and now that she knew him, she thought he would be the perfect person to ask about what she was to do next. She still had no idea where to go in this labyrinth of office chairs and desks. "I'm new here, just starting today," she continued. His eyes lit up. She wasn't just visiting his office, she was here to stay. "This way then. I'll take you to the boss's office, it's just up here." He took her hand and they wove their way through the desks, past her new co-workers and to the doors of her boss's office. Across the front read Editor, Steve Wright. "Yeah, this was it. I'll leave you to it. I hope to see you soon." Jacob released her hand reluctantly and made his way back to his own desk. She stared at the door in front of her. Nervously, she brought her fist up toward it and knocked softly. "Come in," a voice from the other side bellowed. She turned the knob and peeked inside. A man inside the office beckoned her to come in. He looked up and recognized her immediately. "Ah, you must be Deanna. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." Steve rose from his desk and stepped forward to shake her hand. He was in his mid-30s and a little chubby. His tightly collared shirt hugged his round stomach, and a pair of tailored black pants were belted beneath. His face was kind, making her feel so much more at ease. "Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity," she gushed. He smiled back at her, his cheeks revealing small dimples. He brushed his short brown hair back with his hand. "No problem, your grades were outstanding. It will be a pleasure having you as a member of our team here," he spoke quickly. He took a seat back at his desk and urged her to take the one opposite him. She quickly sat and awaited her first assignment as a real journalist, brimming with excitement. "Now, before I give you your first task, there is some paperwork I will need you to sign." He proceeded to run her through some typical work safety forms and contracts. Once signed, he continued his introduction to the magazine. "There are several departments within this magazine," he began. She wondered which one she would be assigned to. Deanna had read through countless copies of Inside Finance before leaving Texas, and had a rough idea of what she really wanted to write, and what she didn't. "For now, I have stationed you in the stock reviews department. This means that you will be working with Matt and Jacob, reviewing the weekly stock market, and writing a 500 to 700 word article on the highest stocks of the week and the lowest stocks." He pulled out a copy of the magazine and opened it to the section she would be producing. Damn, that was not exactly what she had wanted. But at least she would be teamed with Jacob, the only other person she knew at this point. That would compensate for the boring work she would have to be doing. They discussed at length her assignment and what it entailed. Deanna took extensive notes on the formatting and content, ensuring that she would produce a high-quality article. Once she had run out of questions to ask, she stood from her chair and turned to walk out of the office and find her own desk. "Deanna?" Steve questioned before she had taken a step. She spun back around and waited for him to speak again. "Could you do a coffee run? I don't think anyone has had their morning coffees yet." "I'll have a latte, thanks," and with that he sat back down at his desk and began to type on his computer. Deanna grabbed a scrap of paper and a pen from an empty cubicle and began running around to all the desks, taking down orders. Beginning her first job as a journalist would have to wait, she sighed as she made her way from desk to desk. Finally, she arrived at a familiar face. Jacob smiled up at her from where he sat. "Got you doing a coffee run?" he asked. She nodded her reply. "I did that for the first few weeks too, don't worry. It's part of the initiation around here. The new kid does the coffee run," he chuckled. Then she remembered that since she would be working with Jacob, her desk must be close by. "I found out that I'll be working with you, doing stock reviews or something." She witnessed his eyes lit up again. He reached over and tapped another man on the shoulder. The man turned to face him as Jacob exclaimed, "Hey Matt, check out our new stock review writer." Matt stood instantly and stuck out a hand for her to shake. And nice to meet you, he stuttered nervously. It seemed that she was the only woman in this office, something that her boss had neglected to mention. She shook his hand and took their coffee orders. I'll see you guys soon. When I get back from getting these, she gestured to the paper in her hand. Smiling back at her new coworkers, she made her way back out of the office, just 1 hour after she had stepped in, on a mission to find the nearest coffee place so she could start her first day. 2 lattes, no sugar. 1 mocha. 3 flat whites with an extra shot. 2 chamomile teas, sugar. She read the note over and over on her walk to the nearest coffee shop. It was early September, and the autumn breeze was beginning to set in. She pulled her jacket tighter to her shivering body. She had not thought she would be running errands outside on her first day. A few minutes of brisk walking later, she found herself outside the coffee house, and the line was massive. She sighed as she queued up and waited patiently in line for the huge order of caffeine.
Cole.
Cole Waters looked up at the intricate designs painted delicately on the ceiling above his bed. He turned over, only to see his bed empty beside him. It was mornings like this that he wished there was someone lying next to him, someone to hold, but he was all alone in his penthouse apartment, the vast empty space a reminder of his loneliness. He went about his morning routine aimlessly. Showering, dressing, cooking breakfast, it was the same day in and day out. Ever since he had sworn off women, he had been so lonely. There was a reason for this, though. Cole was not just any other man. He was the CEO of a major banking corporation in New York City. He was extremely wealthy, and on top of that, he was also ridiculously attractive. His eyes were a captivating brown, matching his short hair. His jaw was masculine and clean-shaven, leading down to his muscular chest and ripped abs. Putting aside his money, he was still any woman's dream man. But too many people knew of his wealth, and he found that girls would only stick around long enough to get what they wanted from him. Then they would disappear, and he would be alone once more. The vicious cycle had taken a toll on him. At only 29 years old, Cole was one of the youngest billionaires in the world, and he had worked hard for the position he was in. He was not born into wealth. His family was quite poor while he was growing up. But now, he had the ability to do whatever he wanted, and he didn't waste the opportunity. Once outside his upscale high-rise, Cole waved down a passing cab and climbed in. At this end of town, there were always cabs waiting. He gave the destination, and soon they were off down the narrow city streets. He had driven down this route so many times before that he found himself uninterested in even glancing outside. All of the faces looked the same now. The city passed in a blur, and in no time at all they had arrived. Cole exited the cab and made his way to the tower's elevator and then up toward the 72nd floor. The doors opened to his luxury office. Employees greeted him happily as he passed them in the halls. He was liked by everyone who worked for him, just really easy to get along with. At the end of the lengthy hall was his office. He swung open the glass doors and slid through them casually. Once in the comfort of his own space, he took his place at the desk and proceeded to unravel his day's work across the varnished wood. Hours passed, and Cole found that his concentration had lapsed considerably. No wonder. It was almost 9, and he had not yet had any form of caffeine. Leaving the papers where they lay, he grabbed his wallet hastily from his desk and made his way out of the building. It was not far from the nearest coffee place, and he enjoyed the cool winds breezing through the city. Rather than taking a cab, he decided to walk the few blocks to the coffee house. Their baristas were half decent. They could at least make coffee better than the foul, watery stuff at the office. He strolled slowly on the sidewalk, dodging bodies as he walked. Soon he had crossed over to the corner of his destination and walked directly into another person. She stumbled and dropped one of the loaded trays of coffees she had been holding. Lattes splashed everywhere, all over his suit and the pavement before her. She managed to balance the other tray and save that half of her beverages from hitting the ground. Gasping, she began to clear the garbage up with one hand still full of coffees. Cole felt awful. He bent down to assist her, picking up rolling paper cups. Once she looked up at him, he was immediately taken with her. Her innocent beauty resonated through his vision. Awkwardly, they arose together, and she began to stutter her apology. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen you," she said in a panic. He stopped her before she could say anything further. "It's okay, it was my fault," he assured her. He pointed to the full tray in her hand and continued, "What did I just spill everywhere? I will need to replace that," he laughed. "No, don't worry about it," she said, flustered. "Really, I insist." He grasped the tray from her hand and placed it on one of the available outdoor tables. "Wait here, and what was it you ordered?" he asked. She took the place offered to her and listed the items that had spilled. 2 lattes, a mocha, and a flat white with an extra shot. Cole repeated what she had told him and made his way into the shop. He bypassed the long line and approached the register. He waved at one of the baristas, busily brewing coffee behind the counter. "Hey Sandy," he grinned. The woman rushed over to speak with him, abandoning her duties at the coffee machine. "Cole," she exclaimed, reaching over the bench to hug him. "It paid to be a regular here, especially when you bought as much coffee as he did." He explained what had happened just outside and gave her the order with his tacked onto the end. In just minutes, he had paid for the coffees and was on his way out the door, searching for the woman he had left outside. Once he spotted her, he made his way over and placed the fresh tray in front of her. "Here, it's the least I can do." She took the tray and thanked him. Before she could walk off, he offered to pay for a cab. "It's hard enough carrying those trays, let alone through those crowds." He gestured to the street packed with people. "Thank you so much," she said. He hailed her a cab and watched her disappear into New York City, this beautiful woman with no name.
Deanna.
Deanna watched him disappear into the crowd of people. His brown hair was the last thing visible before it was consumed by the busy city. She felt a connection there that could not be explained. She had never experienced a feeling such as this before. Still, she was mortified that she had run into him like that. The suit he was wearing probably cost more than a month's wage for her. She sighed as she realized that, without a name, it was unlikely they would ever see each other again. For the rest of the trip back, she found her thoughts wandering to his muscular physique, his handsome, rugged face, his perfectly styled brown hair, his mesmerizing brown eyes. All of a sudden, a car stopped. She picked up the trays of drinks as the cab driver turned to her. "Here we are, miss, and it's all paid for. Have a nice day." She jumped out and watched as the taxi drove away into the city. She made her way back up to the office to distribute the coffees and get back to work. She gave out the beverages and made her way at last back to her own desk. 1 mocha and 1 flat white extra shot. She handed Jacob and Matt each their drinks. "Thanks, Deanna," Jacob smiled. She sat down and pulled herself into the desk in front of her. Bringing up a blank document on the computer, she began to research the stocks this week. She spent hours silently scrolling through foreign data. At the end of the time, she still had nothing. Suddenly, Jacob appeared behind her. "How's it going?" he questioned, eyes drawn to the blank page before her. She blushed as she realized she hadn't done anything yet.
"Not so well," she admitted.
He bent down beside her. She caught the scent of his delectable aftershave in her nostrils. "It's almost lunch. Do you want to maybe go over some of the basics then?" His smile was comforting to her. "That would be so helpful," she gushed. Deanna was glad that her coworkers had turned out to be so nice. She was never the best at making friends, and she had been slightly worried that no one here would like her. At lunch, she and Jacob made their way to the small park across from the building. She had been in such a rush that morning that she had not noticed it on her walk to work. It was speckled with old trees branching out over the grass, providing a welcome shade. Several food carts had stationed themselves throughout the park. Each one had a queue of a few men and women in business suits, waiting impatiently for their lunch. "The corn dogs from that guy over there are awesome," Jacob pointed out, an old man hunched over a red and yellow cart. She couldn't argue with that. As they approached, she could smell the corn dogs cooking in the deep fryer. It smelled amazing. They lined up, waiting for a couple of people to clear before they could order. 2, please, Jacob said to the man, who pulled 2 corn dogs out of the fryer and wrapped them up in some napkins. Together, they sat on a free park bench and began to eat, while Jacob attempted to explain to her about the basics of stocks and bonds. These are delicious, she interrupted him again. He didn't mind, though. Being the introvert he was, Jacob was astounded that the woman who had entered the office with him earlier that day was now sitting here next to him, having lunch and chatting about work. I have pretty high standards when it comes to street food, he joked. Humor was how he responded to nervousness. Deanna thought it adorable. She could sense how uneasy he was around her, especially at first. She could tell that he had started to warm up to her. They finished off their lunch quickly and spent the remainder of the hour-long break discussing stocks and the layout of her first article. It didn't matter to Deanna what she was writing. As long as her words could earn her a living, she was happy. But it was only now she realized how much she didn't know. How she had come into this job, with no knowledge of what she was to be doing. With all the stress of moving and farewells, she had forgotten to do any research. Thank God for Jacob. He had really saved her butt today. Deanna left the park, feeling as if she knew enough to write a pretty convincing article to submit. I can proofread it for you too, he offered. That would be great. Thank you. You've been so helpful today. She leaned over and gave him a peck on the cheek. Jacob blushed and began to get flustered. Anytime, it was no problem at all. He reached up and started playing with his glasses. She took his hand as they stood, and she led him back toward their building. It's almost noon, we need to be back soon, she smiled as she turned back to him. The remainder of the day flew by. Every time she glanced up to the clock, hours had passed. By the end of the day, Deanna had almost completed half of the article, and it was only Monday. Writing about stocks had been easier than she had first thought, thanks to Jacob's help. Jacob rolled over on his desk chair and caught her off guard once more. Do you want me to have a look over what you've done? He asked. That was exactly what she had wanted. Jacob just popped up at the most convenient moments. She backed away from her desk and allowed him to look over her progress. He spent a few minutes staring at her work, scrolling up and down the page, reading it over and over again. It's only a 300-word paragraph, Deanna thought to herself. What's taking so long? Finally, Jacob backed away from her computer and grinned back at her. It's just what Steve wants so far. Awesome job. He gave her the thumbs up and proceeded to return to his own workspace. She was so pleased with herself. She had thought he would have at least a little criticism. It was satisfying to hear that all her work was on track, and that she would be finished writing by Wednesday. Maybe she would even get a new article to write? Rather than getting ahead of herself, she attempted to clear her mind to continue writing until she, Jacob, and Steve were the only ones left in the office. It's 7 now, I'm heading home. Steve popped up at the desk in front of them. Both she and Jacob jumped in their seats, startled. Staying late on your first day? I'm impressed, Deanna, he complimented her. Thank you, I'm really enjoying the work, she replied as she and Jacob began packing up their things into their bags and followed Steve out of the front doors. He locked it behind him, and they were off down the elevator. Steve waved to them as they reached the ground floor and scurried out in a rush. See you tomorrow, he yelled back to them, and he was gone. Jacob and Deanna both paused at the front door to the office building. Deanna wanted to thank him for making her first day so comfortable. She gave him a huge hug. Thanks, Jacob, I'm so glad that we are working together, she said. He hugged her back. I'm glad there is finally someone cool to spend lunch with. They soon parted ways and she was alone once more, making her way down the street toward her apartment. The sidewalk wasn't as busy as before, but she was still amazed by the sheer number of people still strolling up and down. It was such a contrast to what she was used to. A little creepier, too. 2 blocks from her house, a homeless man grabbed at her ankle. Spare change, he questioned. Startled, she stepped away and reached into her bag, gathering up a few quarters for him, and dropping them into the collection hat he had sitting in front of him. He hurried to take the money, and she briskly continued her walk, hoping to make it home as quickly as she could. Stray cats scurried out in front of her. Or maybe rats. Either way, she didn't want to find out. No wonder no one had stayed late. New York at this time of night had such a dark undertone. It was scary. The building she was headed to emerged from the skyline. She fumbled in her bag for the keys to the door as she made her way up the flights of stairs to her place. Puffed, she jiggled the lock and opened the door. Her neighbor, Mrs. Keats, saw her on her way in. "How was your first day at work, dear?" she asked kindly. Mrs. Keats was quite motherly, and had made Deanna feel a little more at peace with her choice of accommodation. "It was better than expected, thanks for asking," she replied sweetly. A friendly face made her feel so much better after the scary encounter on the street just moments ago. But everything was fine now. She was finally home. Deanna bowled through the door of her apartment, absolutely spent from her exciting and informative first full day in New York City. She mustered the strength to prepare herself a meal before collapsing on the couch to watch some TV. Chewing through the mountain of pasta she had made for herself, she switched on the television to find some sort of light-hearted comedy to take her mind off finance and the serious issues she faced as an adult. She settled on a channel and struggled to keep her eyes open as she watched the screen intently. The credits began to roll as she opened her eyes. The clock on the wall read 11:30. It was so late, but she could barely lift herself from the comfort of the couch to make her way to the bedroom. She threw her day's clothes into a messy pile at the foot of her bed and pulled on her comfy flannel pajamas. There was not enough energy left within her to shower before the next morning. She crawled, drained and tired, into the covers and fell asleep almost instantly. Strangely, her dreams crept back to the stranger who she had bumped into at the coffee shop that day. His warm smile was directed at her as he beckoned her to follow him. That night, her thoughts did not stray far from him.
Cole.
Cole found that the next day, his thoughts remained with the beautiful girl he had almost bowled over at the coffee shop. He had been there every day at various times, and he had never before seen her. He would remember a face such as hers. He pictured her long, light blonde locks brushing delicately against her pale cheek. Her vibrant blue eyes mesmerized him. He had never felt like this about a woman before. The feeling was strange and alien to him. He went about his morning routine in a daze. His mind was just not with the tasks before him. It was with her. He mindlessly showered and dressed himself in one of the many Armani suits he had hung up in his closet. He sprayed aftershave on generously. Then he made his way downstairs and ate a full-cooked breakfast, staring aimlessly into space. Somehow, without knowing a single thing about this woman, he was completely smitten. There was no doubt about it. Cole had never experienced this kind of love at first sight, and it was driving him crazy. Soon he found himself in the cab on the way to his office. He barely remembered walking down from his apartment. All he could do was dream longingly of the girl from the coffee shop. He had to see her again. Arriving at his office, he paid the cab driver before jumping out onto the pavement. He scanned the crowd surrounding him, but her face did not appear. Sighing to himself, he proceeded to make his way to his office and prepare for the meeting he was conducting that day. In the hope of seeing this mystery woman once more, he would get his morning coffee late again. He left at 9 a.m. the day before, so hopefully she would be there around the same time as yesterday. He stepped out of the elevator on the 72nd floor once more. Cole made his way to his office, greeting employees kindly on his way through. He shut his door behind him and gathered his notes for the meeting about to take place. He couldn't even focus when his notes were directly in front of him. What hope did he have of running a meeting with the heads of the corporation? He had to snap out of it before long, otherwise he would look like a total fool. Stepping into the boardroom, he saw that everyone else had already taken their seats. They were all waiting for him. "Sorry, everyone," he apologized before taking his place at the head of the table. He opened his briefcase and took out his notes, placing them out in front of him. Sitting through countless presentations and pretending to be paying attention, he found his thoughts drifting back to that mysterious woman who had captured his mind. He regularly checked his watch, counting the minutes until he could leave. He asked pre-written questions to each of the presenters, only to find that they had been answered already. As he was the CEO, they happily repeated the answers for him, and he scribbled them down on his notes. By 8:30, he was itching to get out of there. The meeting adjourned quickly, and he was the first out the door and into the hallway. He rushed past everyone, ignoring their greetings, and made his way back to his office. There was no way that he would miss her, as long as she was there again. But for some reason, he felt deep inside that he would see her there. He looked at his watch and saw that it was 10 to 9. He had to leave now if he was going to catch even a glimpse of her at the coffee house. He picked up his wallet and cell phone from his desk and rushed through the office and out of the door, making it just in time to the elevator before the doors closed. Sliding through the gap, he played with his fingers and tapped his feet nervously all the way to the ground floor. Once there, he ran to the front doors of the building and hailed a cab almost immediately. "To the coffee house, please," he said breathlessly to the cab driver. The driver nodded and pulled out into traffic. Cole checked his watch for the millionth time that day. Only 4 minutes to 9. He prayed that the traffic was not too bad, and that he would be able to stop her this time so he could at least find out her name. He had some terrible luck with women in the past, but something about her gave him hope that he would find someone who truly loved him for the person he was and not what he possessed. The taxi ride seemed to continue in slow motion. Cole was fixated on the faces passing his window. He scanned the face of each woman, only to realize it was not the one he was looking for. As streets flew past, his hope grew dimmer and dimmer. He had not even caught a glimpse of the blonde-haired goddess who had graced his presence at the shop the day before. The cost of getting his Armani suit dry cleaned had been totally worth her company, if only for a few minutes. His eyes gazed out of the taxi window. Then he saw her. She was rushing, like last time, through the bustling city streets. He could see that she was headed to the same coffee place. His jaw dropped when he realized that he would be able to speak to her, to learn her name. For all he knew, this might be his one chance at love, and he was going to take it. 1 block from the coffee shop, he was dropped at the corner. "Thank you." He smiled at the cab driver and handed over a $50 note without waiting for change. He was determined to find her.
Deanna.
Deanna's next day started much better than the previous. Her alarm woke her up early enough, so she had time to do everything she needed. No need to rush. After the draining first day, she hadn't been quite so organized, so the extra time was useful. She picked out a ruffled pink blouse and high-waisted black skirt. A little more casual than the day before. Having a lengthy shower, she washed her hair and body before climbing out to towel dry. She slid on her prepared outfit in the bathroom and carefully looked over it. This time she would bother putting on makeup. She had ample time to do it this morning. It would make it less embarrassing when she went around bumping into all these mysterious, handsome strangers. She applied a light foundation and some mascara. She didn't want to overdo it. Topping off her outfit with a sheer lip gloss and a plain pair of short black heels, she made her way down the stairs and onto the street once more. Feeling like a true New Yorker, she stopped at a decent-looking bagel stand and ordered a plain bagel with cream cheese for breakfast. Looking at her watch, she knew she still had at least 10 minutes to spare if she was going to be a little early. She paid the man and dug into the delicious bagel she had just purchased. "I'll be seeing you again," she thought of the man as she enjoyed her meal on her walk to the office. All too soon, she arrived once more outside of the decrepit building. Nothing had improved since yesterday. At least she knew the inside was not half as bad. She confidently made her way through the foyer and toward the elevator. She crammed in with a new collage of faces, and the doors closed before her. This time, she and Jacob were the only ones left in the elevator once they arrived. Upon recognizing her, he addressed her immediately. "Fancy seeing you here," he joked. She smiled back at him. I know, what a surprise, she played along. The elevator made a loud beep, alerting them it was about to open once more. He backed up and allowed her to walk out before him in true gentlemanly fashion. They walked beside each other through the office door and took their places at their desks. They chatted amongst themselves until Matt arrived. Morning, guys, he interrupted Jacob mid-sentence. They turned to face him, and ignoring his rude entry into their conversation, they greeted him kindly. Deanna had come to realize that Matt was a little socially awkward, a product of his computer gaming lifestyle. He took his place at his own desk and retracted back into his own world. She asked Jacob a few more nagging questions about the stocks. She was determined to have the finished article to Steve by the end of the day today, even if it meant another spooky walk home in the dark. Deanna and Jacob talked and talked until her well of questions on finance ran dry. Would you like to get lunch again today? Deanna asked him this time. A smug grin crossed his face. I would. Do you want to try your luck choosing a food cart today? He asked her. She thought for a moment. I'll give it a shot. $5 says I pick something better than your corn dogs, she teased. You're on, Jacob replied. They shook hands, sealing the deal. But looking around, they realized that everyone else was concentrating hard on the tasks they had been given for the week. I'm going to have to start on my own stuff. Sorry, Deanna, Jacob apologized. No worries. If I have any questions, I'll scoot over, she laughed. But before she could get stuck into the article again, a tap on her shoulder made her turn. It was the man who worked all the way down the other end of the office. She had taken his order for coffee the day before. She smiled at him. Hey, how are you? She asked politely. Great, thanks for asking. You're the new girl Deanna, right? He asked her. She giggled inwardly. She was easy to spot in this office full of men. Yeah, that's me, she assured him. Satisfied that he had found the right person, he continued, Steve was wondering if you could run down and get everyone coffee again today. If you're all settled in and everything. She nodded her reply and scrambled to find some paper and a pen to take the day's orders. Same as yesterday, boys, she asked Matt and Jacob. They looked up from their work and spoke in unison, yeah, thanks. Running around from desk to desk, she found that the orders were almost the same as yesterday's. The only changes were the teas were now traded in for short blacks. Nearing midweek, everyone needed a caffeine boost. She knocked on her boss's office door. She waited for his response before entering for the second time. Good morning, Deanna, he greeted her with a comforting smile. She gestured toward the growing list of coffee orders. Good morning, sir. Just came to see what you would like from the coffee shop before I head off, she said. He grasped his chin and thought for a moment, I'll get the same as yesterday. Not very adventurous when it comes to food, I'm afraid, he chuckled. She racked her brain, but could not for the life of her remember what he had asked for the day before. And what was that again, she asked. Everything that had happened before she had been literally knocked off her feet by that man was combined in a blur of events. She couldn't remember what she had for breakfast, let alone what he had asked for. Just another latte, thank you, he responded. With the orders completed, she made her way back to her desk to grab her bag on the way out. I'll be back soon, hopefully, she said to her two friends, and she went on her daily mission for caffeine. If you're not back in half an hour, I'll send out the search party, Jacob grinned. She laughed as she picked up her bag and walked straight back out of the door. It took forever to make it in the elevator back down to the ground floor, but Deanna didn't even notice. For the millionth time, her mind had wandered back to the man she had encountered at around this time the day before. She hoped that she would see him again this time. Hopefully, she wouldn't spill a tray full of coffees over him, though. She had regretted that. But what she wouldn't give to have a real conversation with him. She wondered what he was really like. What did he do for work? Where was he from? What brought him here? She wanted to know it all. What lay beneath his incredibly handsome exterior? She hoped desperately to find out. Deep down, she knew that Jacob had a little crush on her, and he was cute and funny. But there just wasn't the same attraction between them. The spark just wasn't there. Not to mention, they worked together. Deanna may have been new to the workforce, but she knew from countless hours of sitcoms that relationships with coworkers can take a turn for the worst all too quickly. To others, Deanna appeared just a blur, making her way hurriedly toward the building's exit. Once on the street, she had to think. Which way had she gone yesterday? It seemed as if the streets to her right were more familiar. She decided to go with her gut instinct, and made her way off to the right. Something deep down inside of her wanted more than anything for the mystery man to be there. She longed to see him again, if only for a moment. Then she would have a chance to ask all of her questions, mainly his name. She imagined him with a name like John or Evan, something powerful and strong. As she strolled the streets, she found herself thinking of her body being scooped up in his muscular arms, being held firmly against his hard chest. Listening to his heartbeat through his collared shirt. The walk took much longer than the day before, or so it seemed. Just as she had almost decided to turn around and head in the other direction, she saw the sign of the coffee house appear in front of her, as if out of nowhere. Happy that her instincts had led her the right way for once, she pushed her way through the remaining bodies and situated herself outside of the front door. Deanna tucked the coffee orders into her pocket. Before entering the coffee house, she scanned the street, hoping that the same man would magically appear like the day before. But he was nowhere to be seen. Feeling disappointed, she made her way toward the end of the queue and lined up once more to get her coworkers their morning caffeine fix. Just as she had lost hope of seeing him again, she felt a strong hand grasp her shoulder. She spun around instantly and found herself face to face with that tall, handsome stranger from her dream. Her heart pounded in her chest as time seemed to stop around them. It was the moment she had dreamt of. He had found her somehow. It was destiny.
Into the flame. Cole.
He had finally found her. His search for the mysterious woman without a name had come to an end. He brushed himself up and gathered his courage to approach her. Cole reached out and tapped gently on the familiar shoulder before him. Deanna turned slowly. He saw her jaw drop slightly as she realized who it was behind her. Grasping tightly to the piece of paper in her hand, she was speechless. He looked her up and down once more. He was taken aback by her feminine beauty. Her features were perfect. She was even more beautiful than he had remembered from just the day before. He was so happy that he had manipulated fate in such a way. All he had wanted since first laying eyes on her yesterday was to find out this woman's name. This was his chance, and he had made it happen. "I thought I might see you here again," he grinned as he broke the silence. I didn't expect to see you again," she stuttered nervously. Cole could see that she was just as nervous as he felt. The years of orchestrating meetings and speaking in front of large groups of people had taught him how to suppress the physical signs of his nerves. Concentrating on keeping his hands from shaking, he continued the conversation cautiously, "Getting more coffees?" "Don't worry, I won't spill them this time," he laughed. Her nerves appeared to melt away with his witty comment. Her smile emerged, and she giggled along with him. As she progressed in the line, they kept chatting. "My name is Cole, by the way," he introduced himself, extending a hand for her to shake it politely. Finally, he would be able to put a name to the beautiful face that he had bumped into the day before. "Deanna," she said. Her name was just as beautiful as she was. Although he longed to tell her this, he decided to instead ask about her work. "So, what do you do for work here in the city?" he asked her. "I just moved here to start writing. I work for a local magazine," she began. "A writer?" He was intrigued. There was one talent that he could never master, and that was the art of the written word. He asked question after question, delving deep into her work life and eventually more when she felt comfortable to share. She continued to discuss her job at the financial magazine. Cole knew a little of stocks and bonds, so he could follow to some extent. She sounded like an expert in the field. "How long have you been writing there?" he questioned. "Just a few days," she responded. "Wow, She must have always had a knack for finance if she knew so much with such little experience. "And what do you do?" Now it was his turn to share. "I'm a CEO," he started. He discussed his career with her at length. This time, it was her turn to be intrigued. She asked questions and he answered each. She was getting to know him better as their time together progressed. As they talked on and on in the queue to get coffees, they hit it off. But their chance meeting was to end soon. Suddenly, they were nearing the front of the line. Their time together in the shop was coming to an end. Although he wished this moment would last forever, he decided to seize the day and ask for her number. "Before you have to rush back to your important journalism career, can I ask for your number?" Her expression changed, and he was not sure what to make of it. Floundering, he tried to take the pressure off the situation. He did not want to scare her off. "You don't have to, only if you—" His sentence was cut short. "Yes," she interrupted. She reached over to the counter and grabbed a card from the desk. Taking a pen from her pocket, she scribbled her number hastily across it. She handed the note over to him, and he grasped it tightly. He slipped it into his breast pocket, making sure not to lose it in the bustling social hub. He would be needing that later, once he had planned the perfect date to take this special woman on. She replaced the pen, and they continued to chat until they had reached the front of the queue. Then, when it was her turn to order, she read out the list to the lady behind the counter, and they stood to the side waiting for the coffees. They continued to talk about work and their lives. He learned of her life back in Texas, and her family and friends that she missed so much. She told him of her years at college, her roommates, her graduation. She even confessed of her loneliness by moving to New York until she began work. He listened intently and hung on her every word. She was so much better than he had imagined her to be. She was so much more than a beautiful face. She was clever and funny. She was everything he had ever dreamed of. He was so glad that his heart had led him here. The coffees arrived all too soon, and it was time for them to part ways. She struggled to carry the 2 trays again. Before another accident occurred, Cole reached out and grabbed one of the trays from her. "I don't want to be buying you replacement coffees every day," he joked. Once out of the store, he handed it back. She was about to depart, and he would be going his separate way. She gained her balance and looked back before she strolled off. "Call me," she said as she walked away. He watched as her attractive physique walked hastily off into the crowded New York street. He could not wait to plan the perfect date to impress this woman. He would be pulling out all the stops. There was no length he would not go to for the most perfect first date that she could ever imagine. He needed to show her how truly special she was. It was time to head back to the office. He had done what he had set out to do, and he had been so successful. Instead of taking the car, he decided to walk back to work. He savored the cool breeze that nipped against his exposed flesh. He strode slowly through the streets, taking the time to look around at the buildings that he was surrounded by. He appreciated the majesty of the city. Almost 20 minutes had passed, and he walked through the door of his own office building. He greeted the doorman and the familiar faces that passed him on the way back to his desk. He was not in the right state of mind to greet everyone by name. Instead, he gave each person a generic hello. His mind wandered back to Deanna, the beautiful, intelligent woman who he had the pleasure of meeting just days ago. Her features flashed through his thoughts, her hair, her eyes, her smile. He made his way up the elevator and back to his private office. There he sat alone, waiting for the perfect date plan to appear in his mind, but so far nothing had materialized. People came and left all day, but his mind was elsewhere. He performed the tasks that were set out for him. Sign a document here, answer a call there, but what he was really consumed by was his planning of the perfect date for the perfect woman. Every spare second he had went to his planning. The restaurant, the music, the hotel, everything was being organized. He was going to make this night one that she would not be forgetting anytime soon.
Deanna.
So far, the morning had not gone exactly how she had anticipated. Deanna left the coffee shop completely removed from the tasks at hand. Her mind was back with Cole. She could now put a name to the handsome face she could not get away from in this vast new city. The man that had haunted her dreams the night before. She had dreamed of him asking her out on a date. Until today, she had no idea that he was the wealthy CEO of a corporation, not that this mattered to her in the slightest. She also found out so much about his personal life and his friends and family. She felt like she knew him so much better now than just a man that she had met in a coffee shop the previous day. On her way back to the office, through the hordes of people that crowded the sidewalk of New York City, she found herself caught up in a daydream. She wondered when he would call and what he would plan for them. She was so excited to see him again, but the suspense of not knowing when was excruciating. She wondered when he would call. All too quickly, she arrived back at the office doors. With the tray of coffees still in hand, she glided through the foyer and made her way up the elevator to her office floor. Just as she had done the day before, she distributed the coffees, leaving her own team until last. "Thanks again, Deanna." Jacob grinned at her as she handed him the hot beverage he had requested. She smiled back and took her seat at the desk opposite. Logging into her computer, she continued her conversation with Jacob about the tasks for the day. "I have to finish this article today," she groaned. Jacob wheeled his chair over to her desk and peered over her shoulder. She had barely started her writing, and she felt like this ominous task was haunting her until she completed it. She wanted so badly to finish it now, so she could get the feedback she needed from her coworkers and their editor. "I can have another look at it later if you want," he offered. She was more than happy to accept. He had taught her so much already, but this was her first project at her new job, and she was going to do everything she could to make it perfect. She organized to give him her finished draft after lunch, and they both got back to work. She put her head down and tried desperately to complete the article. She tried to stay focused on the task ahead, but Deanna found her mind constantly wandering back to Cole, the wealthy CEO, who had sought her out 2 days in a row on the morning coffee run. It felt like fate that he had tracked her down yet again. She was entranced by his charisma and confidence. His handsome features, his hair, his eyes, and his muscular physique stuck in her mind as she struggled to complete the article she had been assigned. The words began to type across the page, slower and slower. Soon progress had ended. Deanna was experiencing a writer's block for the first time in her lifetime. Looking up at the clock on the wall, she realized that it was only an hour until lunch, and she was only just halfway through. It was time to kick into gear and get this thing finished. She needed it done so she could get some proper feedback from Jacob soon. This was taking too long. But as much as she tried, she could not concentrate. Just as the clock ticked over to signal their lunch break, she finished the last sentence of the article. She had no time to read over and edit it before Jacob had a look at it for her, but it would have to do. "Are you coming?" he asked from just feet away. Deanna grabbed her lunch she had prepared and followed him out the door of the office with the rest of her coworkers. They headed out to the park to have their lunches, and Jacob again lined up to buy his lunch. They sat down in the same place and further discussed stocks, picking up where they had left off the day before. This time, however, the conversation progressed into personal life. She learned so much about him and his family. He learned so much about hers. Jacob was falling in love with her fast. He had not had a very successful love life, despite him being so handsome, in a nerdy kind of way. As they chatted, he was weighing up whether to ask her to the party he was invited to that night. It was a really formal affair, hosted by a former coworker of his. Peter, the editor at his last job, had since launched his own company. All of the corporate bigwigs of New York City would be there, and he had been begged by Peter to attend. It was nothing like a night out Jacob would enjoy, and there was little that Peter could say to get him to come. He had denied the invitation so many times already, but soon Peter found a way to get him to the important event. "Bring a date if you want," he had offered. "I need you there, it's a really big deal for me," Peter pleaded. After thinking it over for a week, Jacob finally agreed to come. He just prayed that he could find someone that would keep him company, amongst the high-class people that would be at the party too. He was not comfortable going alone. When Deanna had started working with them, he knew exactly who he wanted to take. The only problem was that the party was tonight. He hoped that it was not too soon to be asking her out anywhere. He had been attempting to muster up the courage to put forth the question to her all day, but still no luck. "I have the draft article done too, if you want to have a look when we get back. I didn't get a chance to edit it yet, so if you can ignore a few spelling errors here and there," she giggled. He snapped back to reality. After he read through her work, he would ask her, he told himself. Looking down at his watch, he realized that the time had flown by. "We better head back," he said. With that, they both got up and headed back to their office building. Wasting no time, when they returned, both of them approached Deanna's desk. She sat down and moved her chair over slightly so he could nudge in beside her. She watched on as his eyes moved up and down the page, scrolling through her words and assessing them in his mind. She waited with bated breath to hear his verdict. After several minutes of silence, he finally turned back to her. "It's just what they are looking for," he grinned. "Despite a few spelling mistakes in there. But I'm sure that you'll fix them up, like you said." She was so happy that she had done well. Deanna leaned over and gave him a huge hug. Jacob blushed slightly as he wrapped an arm around her, reciprocating the embrace. Deanna released him from the hug and thanked him profusely for his help. "You are a genius," she gushed. Her praise made Jacob blush and he replied, "Anytime, Deanna. I'm here to help." He returned to his own desk and continued to write. It was then that he remembered he had meant to ask her to the party tonight. It would have to wait until later now. The hug he had received had left him flustered, and now, as he looked back to Deanna at her desk, it seemed that she was in a state of deep concentration, editing the article she had just completed. She got the article done by the end of the day. Packing up her things, she stood up and bumped straight into Jacob, who was standing just inches from her chair. He had been waiting to ask her something. "Hi Jacob, I was just heading home," she said. "Would you like me to walk with you?" he offered. She could use some company on the chilly walk back to her building. Sure, she accepted, and they made their way out into the cold. The 10-minute walk progressed quickly as they were caught up in conversation. They nearly passed the door to her building. "This is me." She gestured to the door they had almost walked past, and they both stopped in their tracks. There was silence for a moment, as Jacob tried to muster up the courage to finally ask Deanna out that night. "What are your plans for tonight?" he asked. "I was just going to watch some TV and eat some noodles," she laughed. "I was wondering if you would like to come to this party my friend is throwing tonight. It's kind of stuck up and boring, but I would love someone normal to talk to," he gushed. This was not what she was expecting on her walk home. This day was full of surprises. She still had no idea of Jacob's feelings for her, so she agreed. "Sure, I'd love to come. I should probably get out of the house and meet some people," she joked. He arranged a time to pick her up and left, feeling ecstatic that she had said yes. She realized now that she needed to get ready, and fast. There was no time to lose. She raced up to her place and threw her bag down on the floor next to the front door. Leaving clothes in a trail behind her, she undressed, ready to take a shower to wash off the day's work. Jumping into the shower, she thought about what outfit would be suitable for the night that lay ahead. Surprisingly, she found herself excited. This was the first chance she had to meet new people, other than at work, of course. She had barely left the house since she moved in, and the last few days had been so hectic. It would be nice to have a drink and relax. Getting out the shower just minutes later, she skipped in her towel to the small wooden wardrobe in her bedroom. Deanna knew the exact dress that she would wear for the night. Unhooking it from the hanging rail, she stared at her choice for the evening. It was a short pale blue cocktail dress. The hem was lined with soft lace, and the neckline revealed just enough. It was perfect. She slipped the dress over her head and put on a pair of white strapped heels. Looking at herself in the mirror, she decided her choice was excellent for the formal do she was going to attend with Jacob. She quickly redid her makeup and sprayed some perfume before the buzzer to her apartment sounded. At first she did not hear it, but the second time she realized it and rushed to the door. "Hello," she said, pressing the button to the speaker. "Hey, Deanna. Are you ready?" Jacob asked from the ground floor. She grabbed her handbag and pressed the buzzer once more before heading downstairs. "I'm coming," she yelled as she ran out the front and locked the door behind her. Arriving downstairs, she saw Jacob. He looked so handsome in his suit. He smiled as she walked down the stairs to meet him. He marveled at her beauty. She was stunning. "Let's do this," she said excitedly. Jacob hailed down a cab, and he opened the door for her as they made their way off to the party.
Cole.
Back at his office, Cole Waters busily planned for his date with this perfect stranger. He could finally put a name to the beautiful face that had blown his mind just yesterday, the woman who he had run into so carelessly. There were no lengths that he would not go to in creating a date that was beyond what Deanna could have imagined. But where to go? Opening the laptop before him, he hastily scanned destinations within a reasonable distance of home. Then he found the perfect place, Rome, Italy. He worked relentlessly, booking his private pilot for the trip the following Saturday. The journey would take at least 8 hours non-stop from New York to Rome. Cole ensured that they would be spending their travel time in the utmost luxury. He made call after call, stocking his plane with an exorbitant amount of expensive wines. He hired the best private chefs that he knew to cook for them while they were in the air. "Hey, Cole." His business partner peeked his head around the door to his office. He looked up briefly, enough time for him to recognize the face and greet him. "Hi, what were you after?" he asked bluntly. Surprised at his tone, the man at the door continued with his question. There was an important formal party that night, hosted by one of their most valued investors. It was his duty to get Cole to show up. He was not going to take no for an answer, not this time. "I really need you to attend this party tonight, Cole," he began. Cole looked up at him, taking his mind off the upcoming date for just a second. He thought for a moment, running the options over in his head. With nothing else planned for the evening, he begrudgingly accepted. "I guess I'll make an appearance," he said. Ecstatic, Ken thanked him profusely. "Thank you, Cole. But now that you've agreed to go, I'm going to make sure you get there," he joked. Then Ken slipped back out of the office door and disappeared. It would not be too bad. He had almost finished planning his spectacular night for Deanna. The hotel was booked, the flights were arranged, dinner was set up. There was nothing more that he needed to do. He was satisfied that this would be a night that she would never forget. He would not either. Now, when to call her? He had only just seen her today. He went over and over the outcomes in his head. The date was not planned for another week and a bit, so he decided to wait until the following Monday. He felt like a week from their first meeting would be an appropriate amount of time. He did not want to appear too eager, in fears of scaring the beautiful young woman off. That was a thought that he just could not even bear. The rest of the day flew past. He stayed back for an hour, finishing the work that he had disregarded while getting ready for the spectacular date. Finally done, he packed up and began to walk out the office when a voice popped up behind him. "Don't forget about the party tonight," he called. Cole turned and nodded toward Ken. Damn, he had completely forgotten. His pace quickened as he made his way out the door and down the elevator. Finally, the date escaped his thoughts, and they now turned to the encroaching party he would be attending that night. He ran to his hired car and was home quickly. Racing up to his apartment, he quickly went through the wardrobe and picked out his suit for the night. A fitted black jacket and a matching pair of black tailored pants. For beneath the jacket, he chose a cream-colored shirt. Before getting dressed, he jumped into the shower. He stood for a moment beneath the shower head, letting the warm water wash over his face and down his toned, muscular chest. He was not too thrilled about spending his night talking to a bunch of rich, entitled people. Their company was not the kind that he chose to surround himself with. But this was the cost of doing business. 10 minutes passed, and he gingerly stepped from the shower, grabbing a soft white cotton towel and wrapping it around his waist. Cole walked back through to his bedroom, drying off as he went. Getting back to the room, he hastily pulled on the clothes that he had laid out for the evening. Finishing the outfit off with a pair of dark brown leather shoes, he looked himself up and down in the mirror. Although too modest to admit it, he looked amazing in the formal wear. Glancing down at his watch, he realized it was almost time to leave. That is, if he wanted to be there on time. He grabbed his wallet and keys from the kitchen bench on his way out, as he sped through the front door and narrowly caught the elevator on its way down to the lobby. He stood there, alone, anticipating the worst from the party he was about to attend.
Deanna.
Jacob paid the taxi driver, and the man thanked them as he made his way to the next job for the night. "Have a good time, kids," he said to them as he tipped his cap. "Thank you," Deanna replied as she climbed out. Jacob took her hand to help her out, and once the door was closed once more, the taxi sped away. "This is the place," Jacob gestured toward the building to their right. It was majestic. The architecture of the structure was delicate and decorated with carved stone. "Wow," she exclaimed. Even from the outside, it was much fancier than she had been expecting. Upon entering the foyer, Deanna was getting more and more self-conscious about her outfit. The women around her were so much more dressed up than she felt. Their makeup was meticulously done, each face looked flawless as they passed her. "You look great, and we don't have to talk to anyone else here." "I just came for the free food," Jacob joked when he saw her worried expression. Deanna laughed. He made her feel at ease here, and she was glad to get out of the house with her new friend. It did not matter where they went. They left their names at the entrance, marking them off the list of guests that were invited. She stepped into the door and saw that it was the most extravagant party she had even been to. It was like a film. The band played on the stage in the corner, and waiters ran around the floor, serving appetizers to the guests. Barely a few feet in, and Deanna already had a glass of champagne in one hand and a tiny stuffed mushroom in the other. "You were right, the food is great," she said to Jacob before popping the tiny appetizer into her mouth. The flavors in the mushroom were divine. Deanna was definitely not skipping on the food tonight. Several appetizers later, and they had found a quiet corner to sit, where they could eat and drink alone, without the judging stares of the rich people who flooded the party. "This will do," Jacob said as he directed her to the couch against the wall on the far side of the room. This was perfect for them. Neither wanted to be caught up in dull conversation with the overprivileged partygoers. They grabbed a couple more nibbles before taking a seat. The stylish lounge suite was so comfortable. With drinks and food being delivered to them where they sat, there was no reason to go anywhere now. Deanna knew already from looking around that it would be unlikely that these people would give her the time of day, let alone form a friendship with her. Sighing inwardly, she turned back to Jacob and decided to make the most of her night with him. He was still fairly new to her, and there was still so much about him that she wanted to know. "Hey, Jacob!" A masculine voice behind them yelled across the room. People looked on as the host of the party made his way through the crowd and straight to where they sat. His smile was contagious, and Deanna could not help but reciprocate. Both she and Jacob stood as she was introduced, and then they returned to their seats. Callum, the man who had invited them both here, sat next to them, and with pleasantries addressed, he began a brief conversation. "How are you guys liking it here tonight?" he asked. Deanna and Jacob agreed that it was a great night, although they left out that it was not exactly their cup of tea. "The food is excellent." "Who did the catering?" Jacob asked. "He sure loves his food," Deanna thought, as they discussed the origin of the appetizers and the catering company Callum had employed for the night. As quickly as he had spotted them, Callum was off again to mingle with his plethora of guests. "It was lovely meeting you," he said to Deanna, taking her hand and kissing it politely before making his way back across the floor. "He is something," she said to Jacob as she turned back to him. Their conversation had been cut so short, Deanna was not sure what to make of Callum yet. "He is pretty down to earth when he doesn't have a party to run," Jacob said. In all honesty, he had barely seen Callum since he started at his new job. They were now several drinks in, and Deanna was beginning to feel tipsy. Jacob had had enough to drink too, but he was able to hold himself together a little better than her. All his drunken, late nights in college had prepared him for being intoxicated in the real world. Deanna's words began to slur slightly, and she was getting more and more confident in herself. Seeing her current state, he started denying her the glasses of champagne when they came around. "I'm going to grab you some water," he said as he got up and grabbed a glass. Deanna scanned the room, swearing that she caught a glimpse of Cole. The man she saw had the same build and hairstyle, but with her cloudy vision she could not be sure. As Jacob came back with a drink, she dismissed the notion from her thoughts. Surely she would not be seeing him for a third time in 2 days. The night bustled on around them. The band played relentlessly. Every time she looked up, Deanna saw couples approaching the dance floor. When the conversation thinned, Jacob extended an arm and asked her to dance. "It looks like you are pretty keen to dance," he began. Before he could finish his sentence, Deanna grabbed his arm and ran them both out onto the designated dance floor. The beat was fast-paced and they moved quickly to keep up. She stumbled a few times, but eventually Deanna found her rhythm. She and Jacob had a blast, ripping up the dance floor with their confident moves. The cocktails had definitely helped them lose any inhibitions that kept them both huddled up in the corner. All of a sudden Jacob had disappeared, and she was dancing with strangers. In her current state, she did not care. She was finally having fun in the city she had always dreamed about living in. This is just how she imagined New York City would be. Ever since she was a little girl, Deanna had dreamed of living in New York. It was the city that she always saw plastered across the television. It was the subject of her favorite movies, the greatest songs. There was nowhere else in the world that she could picture herself. It had been a dream come true to be accepted into employment so soon after finishing college. Although her friends and family had been sad to see her leave, it was an adventure that she could not wait to begin. The first week had been lonely and boring, but now she finally felt as if she was taking advantage of what the city had to offer. The last few days had been so hectic and full of surprises. This is exactly what she had pictured for her new start. The events she could not have predicted, but this is how she imagined it would feel. She felt free. She felt alive. There was nothing that could bring her down. There was no one that could get in her way. This was the new Deanna. She wanted to live. As Deanna danced, she did not see the familiar man watching her from across the room. He looked on as her beautiful silhouette glided across the wooden floor. He watched as all the other men marveled at her beauty, her charisma, her confidence. So caught up in the fun she was having, Deanna did not notice the man approach her until she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Spinning around, she was surprised by who she saw. His familiar face had appeared as if out of nowhere. Was it fate?
Cole.
Through the crowded room, he spotted her. Her beautiful physique flowed across the dance floor. His jaw dropped slightly when he realized that his eyes were not deceiving him, not this time. Mid-conversation, his eyes were drawn to her and he ceased to speak. He did not expect to see her so soon since their last meeting earlier that day. "Excuse me a moment," he said as he made his way over. He pushed past the bodies that stood in his path. He made sure that she never left his sight. Was it fate that they both found themselves here tonight? He could not wait to find out. Finally, he found himself just feet away from Deanna. Her back was turned, and she still had not noticed his presence. She was dancing carelessly, surrounded by other happy partygoers. She looked amazing as she moved along to the music. He could not wait another moment. "Excuse me," he said as he placed a strong hand on her shoulder. Without a second wasted, she turned and saw him. He witnessed her jaw drop slightly at the sight of him. She was equally surprised to see him here. "Hi, Cole," she said as he took her hand and bent down to kiss it gently. He looked up in time to see her blush slightly and turned back to the man she was conversing with. "Jacob, this is Cole. I met him just the other day. she introduced Cole to her friend, and they shook hands politely. "Do you mind if I steal her away for a moment?" Cole asked Jacob. He nodded and walked over to another group of friends, looking a little wounded. Deanna waved goodbye to him and assured him that they would meet up again soon. Somehow, he did not believe her. "I didn't think I would be seeing you so soon," she said as she turned back to face him. She seductively took a sip of her wine, and he was mesmerized by her once more. "I just can't stay away, apparently," he replied. This was true. They both went to a couch at the edge of the room and sat down there together. He grabbed her another glass of alcohol, and they continued where they had left off at the coffee place. He listened intently to her every word. He was mesmerized by her. He still could not shake the feeling of disbelief. How had he bumped into her twice in one day? It was too good to be true. The time passed quickly. Hours went by, and they chatted as the wine flowed. The room moved around them, but neither Cole nor Deanna noticed anyone but each other. The party emptied slowly, and they found themselves to be some of the only ones left. They chatted about life and work. He learned so much more about her. She learned so much about him. The world around them simply melted away, and there was no one else in the room. He had no idea that she would be coming tonight, but now he was so happy that he had dragged himself out that night. Checking his watch, Cole noticed that it was already almost 1 in the morning. "It's getting late," he said. She nodded her agreement. They had had a lot to drink, and both were feeling quite tipsy. "Would you possibly like to come back to my apartment with me? It's quite close to here," he asked boldly. He saw her look around for the man that she had arrived with, but he had already gone. It was just the two of them now. Sure. It was the answer he had hoped for, but still did not expect. He took her hand, and they stood up before making their way to the door. They walked hand in hand through the building and out onto the chilly street. Noticing the brisk weather, Cole removed his fitted jacket and draped it around Deanna's slender shoulders. She gripped it in her fingers and pulled it closer to her skin. Then, he extended an arm and wrapped it around her over the jacket. It was a perfect night. When he was asked earlier that day to attend this party, he was never expecting the woman he had been doting on to appear there too. It was a dream come true. Deanna moved closer to him as their journey progressed. He was getting to know her better and better as the night went on. He prayed that it did not have to end anytime soon. He did not expect her to stay the night with him. He just craved her company. He wanted to sit down and talk with her, alone for hours on end. He knew in his heart that she was more than just another date, she was the one for him. He had known from the first moment, and his judgment never faltered. He would do everything within his power to keep her around. This was one relationship that would not end with heartache. They arrived at his building and made their way past the doorman and up the elevator. They chatted the whole way. It was as if the conversation between them never stood still. There was always something to say. He watched as the elevator door opened wide on the top floor of the upper-class building he called home. Opposite them was a huge polished wooden door that belonged to Cole. "This is it," he gestured toward the door before them. Together, they stepped out of the elevator, and he fumbled nervously with his keys before he finally got them into the lock. He turned them roughly and exposed the beautiful penthouse apartment hidden behind. He heard Deanna gasp as she took in her new surroundings. While she stared, he made his way to the bar in the kitchen and poured them each a glass of red wine. "Here," he handed her the glass, and they sat down together on the black leather couch. Watching her sip gingerly from her glass, Cole continued the conversation from where they had left off. He stared into her beautiful eyes as she spoke. There was nowhere in the world he would rather be at this moment than right here with this mesmerizing, intelligent woman.
Deanna.
Deanna was spellbound by the moment. This was not where she had expected to be at the end of the night. It had only been that morning that she had learned this man's name, and now she was back at his apartment alone. However, there was something about him that drew her in. She had known it from the first second they had laid eyes on each other the day before at the coffee shop. That fateful encounter. She did not know where the night was headed, but she could not wait to find out. "Would you like another glass?" Cole asked her. She held the glass toward him and watched as the scarlet liquid flowed into the cup. Both she and Cole were becoming increasingly tipsy. The conversation was shifting towards one of a sensual nature. He was so handsome and interesting, what woman would pass up the chance? Deanna had been so lonely. It was not just that. She would not have just thrown herself at any man who showed her this attention. She was drawn to him and his presence. She hung on to his every word, and subsequently wished that this night would never end. There was no place that she would rather be than here with him. But she was still not expecting the turn that the night was about to take, and it began with his next words. "From the first moment I saw you, I knew you were special," Cole said softly as he gazed into her eyes. Deanna melted inside. The whole world around her evaporated away. She felt exactly the same as he did. It was just so nice to hear it reciprocated. Without another word spoken between them, Deanna reached up and grasped his face, pulling it gently toward hers. She felt his warm lips press against hers. It was everything she had imagined: heat, electricity, a sense of falling into something she couldn't stop. Fireworks went off behind her eyes as his arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. Their kiss deepened, slow at first and then more urgent, the kind that made it hard to breathe. Deanna's hands found his chest, feeling the solid warmth beneath his shirt. He responded in kind, his touch exploring the shape of her back, her shoulders, the curve of her waist. When they broke apart for air, both were breathless. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, his thumb lingering against her cheek. "You have no idea what you do to me," he murmured. She smiled faintly, her heart pounding. "I think I might." He laughed softly, the sound low and rough, before kissing her again, slower this time, more deliberate, as though he wanted to memorize the taste of her lips. The rest of the world faded. The couch, the walls, the passing minutes, none of it existed beyond the steady rhythm of their hearts. When he lifted her effortlessly into his arms, she didn't protest. It felt natural, inevitable, as if this moment had been waiting for them. He carried her down the hallway, pausing to kiss her again beneath the soft glow of the light. She traced her fingers over his shoulders, memorizing the strength in them, the quiet tenderness in the way he held her. By the time they reached the bedroom, words had become unnecessary. The air between them hummed with unspoken promises, of trust, of need, of something deeper than either of them had expected. He hesitated for just a heartbeat, his gaze searching hers. "Are you sure?" Deanna nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I've never been more sure." He smiled, and the kiss that followed wasn't rushed or frantic. It was slow, reverent, an unspoken vow that whatever happened next would mean something. The rest of the night unfolded softly, the sound of their quiet laughter mingling with the steady rhythm of the rain outside. As she lay in the comfortable cotton sheets with his arms wrapped around her, she felt complete. There was nothing on earth that could replace him in her heart. Last night had not gone exactly as she was planning, but that was by no means a bad thing. Now she was here with Cole. She did not even care that she had to be at work in an hour. She did not think of where Jacob had gotten to once Cole had made an appearance. She dreamed of where this relationship would take her. She did not feel alone anymore.
Cole.
Cole prepared breakfast as he thought about the events that had unfolded last night. He whipped up a batch of pancakes from scratch and turned on the stove to preheat. He poured them onto the greased pan mindlessly, one by one, until a stack began to form. As the pancakes sizzled on the stovetop, he pictured Deanna's beautiful silhouette that was currently laid across his bed. She was not like any other woman that he had ever met. There was something about Deanna that was special. Through all of his escapades, Cole had never experienced this feeling before. Was it love? He did not know yet. He was so glad that he had gone along to the party Callum had thrown the night before. At first he had been resenting his partner for making him go the previous night, but now he was so grateful. He went over the events of last night in his mind as he cooked away. Hopefully, he could hang on to this amazing woman, at least for a while. Her love was like a drug, he needed more. With a full English breakfast in hand, Cole walked into the bedroom where Deanna still lay, just waking up for a day at the office. He smiled as she rolled over. Her beautiful hair was messy and unkempt, but as she stretched out her body across the mattress, he thought she was still just as stunning as she had been at every other meeting they had had before. There was nothing that would make her any less attractive to him. In everything that she did, she was perfect. "Wow," she exclaimed at the breakfast he had prepared for the two of them. He sat the trays down in front of her and sat down beside her on the bed. Both of them sat there, in their underwear, chatting about the party the night before. As the conversation flowed, Cole weighed up in his mind whether or not to ask her on the date he had planned here and now. Sure, it was not the way he had imagined their first romantic evening going, but he knew her well enough now. She was no longer just a beautiful stranger from the streets of New York City. She was Deanna, the fun, intelligent woman he had run into at the event he attended last night. She was the woman that he wanted to be with. Still, there was no reason to rush these things. Cole decided that he would stick to his plan, waiting to ask her out the following week. "Thanks for breakfast," she said through a mouthful of food. He, too, began to eat. "You're welcome. I hope you had as much fun as I did last night," and as she looked up, he winked at her. "What are your plans for the day?" he asked her. He saw her glance back at the clock and giggle as she realized something. "I was meant to be at work 10 minutes ago. I think I'll be late today." "Me too," he replied. They finished breakfast quickly once their inherent lateness was addressed. "I need to get changed," Deanna exclaimed. She could not turn up at work in the dress she had been wearing the night before. "I think I have something here," Cole said calmly as he made his way to the wardrobe. He had some women's clothing that belonged to his mother for when she came to visit. Despite her age, Mrs. Waters was extremely stylish and owned many designer clothes. They were not Deanna's size, a little larger than she would have liked, but they would do for one day. Together they scanned the shelves and picked out a pale gray pantsuit. "I hope it fits okay," Cole said as he handed it over. When she came out of the bathroom, dressed for the day, he was amazed at how good she looked in the drab clothes they had picked out. Somehow, she managed to pull off the outfit. "How does it look?" she asked him. "You look great," he replied, smiling at her as she walked toward him. "I have to go. I can't be too late. My boss will kill me," she said. Then she stood up on her tiptoes and kissed him lightly on the lips. "I had a really good time last night. I hope we can do it again soon," she whispered. There was no doubt in his mind there would be a second date with Deanna, sooner rather than later. "Of course we will. Seeing you definitely made my night. I can't wait to do it again," he gushed. Normally he was so cool around women, but sometimes being in her presence made him flustered. This was one of those times. "Would you like a lift to work?" he offered. All too quickly she agreed. Already late, she needed to get to her building as soon as possible. "That would be so great." "Thank you," she grinned. With that, Cole changed fast into a work suit and they made their way down the elevator and to the hired car that was waiting for them. "After you," Cole said as he opened the door for Deanna and allowed her to climb in ahead of him. The car pulled away from the curb and they were off. Deanna gave the driver directions to her building, which was just streets from his apartment. "This is my stop," she said as they pulled up outside. He grabbed her one last time and kissed her passionately before she escaped the car and proceeded with her day. He did not want her to forget the night that they shared, and he definitely did not want it to end. But it would have to, and the time had come. She opened the door and climbed out of the car. "I'll call you soon," he assured her. "I can't wait," she replied, and with that she shut the door and disappeared into the crowded New York City sidewalk. For the rest of the car ride, he reminisced about the night that he had shared with the woman of his dreams. He could not wait to see her again.
Caught in the flames. Deanna.
Too late to make the coffee run, Deanna found herself being met with grumpy stares as she came into her office late for the first time. The men's obvious aggravation with her was apparent. "Sorry, I'm late," she said as she hurried to get all the coffee orders. Finding all wanted the same thing again, she dashed off to get the coffees. It was taking a big notch out of the time she had to finish up her article, and she was a little peeved no one else thought to go get the coffee in her absence. She found the wait in line completely boring without Cole there to talk to, as she waited the eternity it took to get the caffeine her coworkers seemed to need. Back up to the office, and when she brought the coffees to her closest two coworkers, she found Jacob looking sheepish. "So, how did your date go?" he asked. Deanna looked away, feeling pretty bad about going to the party with him, but leaving him in the cold as soon as Cole found her. "Sorry about ditching you, Jacob. I really am." She sat down in her little cubicle, but moved the chair back so she could continue to talk to him. "It's just that Cole and I bumped into each other at the coffee place the first day I came to work here, and we had a real spark. I hope you can forgive me." "Yeah, no problem, Deanna. So, lunch today or are you busy?" he asked as he took his glasses off and cleaned them. "I'd love to go to lunch with you, Jacob." "Thanks." She smiled and began to feel like things would be okay between them. After hours of editing her little article, she finally felt it was ready, and asked Jacob if he had time to look it over after lunch before she turned it in. He agreed to, and they took off to grab some lunch. Jacob led her to a truck with pizza slices, and they grabbed a couple of waters and headed to a bench to enjoy the break and take in some fresh air. "So that guy's a billionaire. Did he tell you that?" Jacob asked her, then took a bite of the pepperoni pizza. She nodded. "He's so much more than money, Jacob. He's sweet and funny, and the most interesting man I've ever met." "Great," he said. "I mean, good for you, Deanna." "Really? So, do you think you'll see him again? I mean, did he ask you out again?" "Well, no, he didn't. But he's going to call. I gave him my number anyway. Gosh, I hope he calls." Deanna began to worry a little, as she kind of thought he might call her and ask her to go eat lunch with him, as their offices were close enough they could have done that. "Don't sweat it if he doesn't," Jacob said. "I mean, you shouldn't rush anything." "No, you're right, I know that." She took a drink of her water and frowned. "It's just that I think we have a real connection, and to be honest, I thought he'd want to go eat lunch with me. I kind of thought he might call by now and at least make some dinner plans." "Just a heads up," he said. "From what I hear, most guys let a girl stew for a few days after what you two most likely did. Not that it's my business at all, but from how you came in late, I guessed you two stayed the night together." Well, yeah. So, I can expect not to hear from him for a few days then? That kind of sucks." She took a bite of the pizza. She didn't really feel like eating anymore, as her appetite seemed to have disappeared. "You could always call him, I guess," he said as he carefully folded up the greasy napkin that had held his pizza. "He did give you his number, right?" She got up, and they walked to toss their trash away in the bin. "No. We were rushed this morning, and that little thing got overlooked, I'm afraid." Jacob grabbed her hand and led her back up to their office, a little smile on his face as he still thought there just might be a chance for him yet.
Cole.
"Finally, you're here, Cole." "Damn, man. Did you have to pick today to be late?" one of his partners, Rob, asked, as he took him by the arm and hurried him to his office. "You and I have to be in Denver in just a few hours." "Wait. What?" Cole asked as he stopped. "How could you have forgotten that we have that meeting in Denver? We'll be out there until Monday." Rob moved him along again. "Shit. I did forget all about that. I haven't even packed." Cole became flustered and quickly gathered the paperwork he'd need and shoved it in his briefcase. "We'll stop by your apartment and grab you a few suits. But you'll have to hurry. The company jet is waiting on us at the airport," Rob said as he helped Cole gather the things they would need. Cole was frantic. He had to hurry, and it would be nice to have a moment to call Deanna and let her know he'd be away for a while, but that he'd call her every night before he went to bed. The morning flashed by as he was hurried along, and he and Rob were finally in the air, making their way to the Denver meetings that would last all weekend long. Cole was dreading it, but even more so now, as he could only think about spending more time with Deanna. He began to look for the card she'd given him with her cell number on it, but it wasn't in his wallet, and he could have sworn that's where he put it yesterday. Then it hit him that he hadn't put it in the wallet at all. He'd put it in the pocket of his slacks he'd been wearing, and they had been picked up by the cleaners. Cole was screwed. He'd not be able to call her, and when he got back to New York in 5 days, he'd have to find her at that coffee shop. He felt awful, knowing she'd be thinking he was making her wait or putting her off. The last thing he wanted to do was play games with her. He hoped she wouldn't get mad at him and go out with someone else to get back at him. He'd finally met the girl he thought might be the one for him, and he might end up losing her already.
Deanna.
The days had passed, and Deanna had not had one word from Cole. A text would have been sufficient. But there was nothing, and Deanna was feeling like she'd been used by the man. Of course, he didn't really want anything real with her. He was a man of extreme wealth, and she was a little country girl from Texas, a broke article writer. She felt like an idiot as she made her way into work. It was Friday and everyone was happy, except her. Most had big plans for the weekend. Her plan was to sit home and hope Cole would call. Jacob's wide smile greeted her as she came in and took her seat. "TGIF, Deanna," he said, then patted her on the back. "A few of my friends are getting together tomorrow. Would you like to join us?" She shook her head. "No, thank you for asking though." He spun her chair around and made her look at him as he took her chin in his hand. "Deanna, don't wait around for that guy. Things like this happen. They don't call them one-night stands for no reason. I mean, you said he's not even showing up to get coffee anymore, so don't take it personal. But I feel like a fool. I mean, why did I have to go and sleep with a guy? That's so not like me. The first time I go and do something like that, and boom, it blows up in my face." She spun back around and laid her head on her little desk. Jacob felt sorry for her, but happy for himself. "Deanna, don't let it get to you. Come on and hang with me this weekend. It'll be fun, I promise." She laid there contemplating if she should hang out with Jacob and risk him thinking he had a shot with her, or waiting like a pitiful loser at home for the man she thought she had a real connection and chance with to call her. She shouldn't even want to wait around for someone who would leave her hanging the whole week after what they did together. She must have been wrong about Cole being the man for her. She pulled her head up and turned back to find Jacob in his little cubicle. Deanna moved her chair over near his and said, "You know what, I will take you up on your offer, Jacob. Thanks. And I'll try not to be such a sad sack around your friends." He smiled widely at her. "Great. It'll be fun, you'll see." Deanna got back to work on her new article and tried to forget about Cole and his dreamy good looks and killer body. It would be hard, nearly impossible, but she'd give it a try anyway.
Cole.
The jet brought them into New York around 6 in the evening, and Cole was jittery with nerves as he wondered how Deanna would react when he finally found her. He left the airport and had a cab take him home. He had no choice but to wait until the morning and hope she was at the coffee shop. He found himself looking at the people walking down the sidewalks as he sat in the back of the cab. He was searching for her, but knowing he wasn't going to find her. The cab stopped at a light near the building he dropped her off at the morning after their night of making passionate love to each other. Blonde hair billowed out around someone's head as they stepped out of the door to the building, and his heart stopped. His hand involuntarily grabbed the door handle. Then he saw a guy with glasses run his hand over her hair, smoothing it down, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her in close to him. It was the guy Deanna had been at that party with, and when she raised her head, he saw her. She kissed the guy on the cheek and the two headed off together. Cole's heart sank, and he knew he'd missed out on her. With him gone, and not even giving her a phone call to explain things, she'd moved on. The rest of the cab ride to his apartment was a blur as his mind was gone. She was gone, and now he really was done with women. He had no one to blame but himself. He should have taken better care of that card with her phone number on it. It was special, after all. She was special, and that other guy had snatched her up when she thought Cole was a jerk who was avoiding her. What must she think about the fact he hadn't even show up at the coffee shop? He knew Deanna must have thought he was avoiding it, and her. She couldn't have been more wrong. But it was too late. Cole made his way into his apartment, and found it the way just as he had left it when he packed quickly and dashed off to the airport 5 days earlier. To the right side of his bed, in a tiny pile on the floor, were the panties he ripped off her that night. He picked them up and tossed them in the trash can in the bathroom. He may as well get all traces of her out of his mind. She'd moved on. And why wouldn't she? Cole went to shower and found himself in bed, unable to sleep as he kicked himself mentally all through the night.
Deanna.
Thanks for walking me home, Jacob, Deanna said as they got to her apartment building. You're a great friend. Not a problem. See you at the office in the morning. Jacob let go of her hand and gave her a wave before moving on. The weekend had been fun, and when he made a move to kiss Deanna, she let him down easy. She also pointed out that one of the girls who hung in his group had a massive crush on him that he'd never realized. With Deanna's help, Jacob had managed to make a date for the next weekend with the girl, and he had found a sincere friendship with Deanna. Everyone was happy. Except Deanna, who was still thinking about Cole. She spent the night eating noodles and watching television. A love story was on, and she watched it and then kicked herself for doing it, because at the end she cried not only for the lost love in the movie, but for her lost love as well. It was too much, and she found herself depressed. She went to bed but was unable to sleep, because she was replaying every single second of time she'd spent with Cole. She knew it wouldn't help a thing, but she couldn't really stop herself. She managed to fall asleep at least for a few hours, she found, as her alarm woke her up the next morning. Moving slowly and groggily, she pulled her hair into a ponytail and skipped the shower. Deanna applied a little mascara and dressed in a plain black skirt and white shirt. As she dragged herself into the office, Jacob spotted her and asked, "What the heck is wrong with you, Deanna?" "I foolishly watched a love story on television last night and broke my heart all over again. I'm an idiot." She made the rounds to get the coffee orders and left again. Deanna trudged down the busy sidewalk, suddenly very aware of the many people bustling around her, and it aggravated her to no end. She was mumbling to herself about how she hated everybody and everything. The line at the coffee shop was as long as she'd ever seen it. She got in line and waited as she took out her phone and did what she did every time she was waiting in line there. She looked to see if there was a call or a text she'd somehow managed to miss. And like always, there wasn't. A hand grasped her shoulder and heat ran through her. She spun around and there he was with a smile across his handsome face. "There you are," he said. He pulled her into his strong arms and held her tight. "Cole," she said, then found herself crying. "I thought..." "Shush, I know, baby. I'm so sorry. I was sent out of town, and I lost the card with your number. Don't worry, I'm not mad that you moved on. I'm sad about it, but not mad." He ran his hands over her back and pulled away to find her crying and shaking. "We should get out of here. You look like you need a moment." He ran his arm around her shoulders, and she buried her face in his wide chest as she continued to cry. He took her around the corner to a less busy sidewalk and held her as she cried. "Cole, I thought you were avoiding me." "I'm so sorry, Deanna. I'd never do that. Are you going to be okay?" He ran his arms around her as he moved them into the little opening of a bodega. "Now I am." She lifted her head and wiped her tears. "Wait. Did you say that I moved on?" He nodded. I saw you two yesterday evening as you left your office. You were with that same guy you were with at the party that night. She began laughing. No, we aren't together. I'm not with him or anyone. His eyes lit up. You're not. So you're free? Deanna nodded enthusiastically. As a bird, Cole. She was pulled up into a hug that lifted her feet off the ground. Thank God, he said, then placed her back on the ground. As much as I want to drag you back to my apartment and rip your clothes off right now, I know you have to get back to work, and so do I, but you and I are going to lunch together. What time do you want me to meet you at your office? Really? She asked in disbelief. I mean, is this really happening? He smiled.
Yes, if you wanted to.
She nodded. I do, like I've never wanted anything in my entire life. Then he kissed her hard and with so much passion, she thought she was melting right there on the sidewalk as people passed by, and one guy even whistled. He released her mouth and pressed his forehead to hers. I guess we better go get back in that line and get your mountain of caffeine back to your office before they come looking for you. She smiled and ran her arm around his waist as his ran over her shoulders, holding each other close as they walked back and got in the long line. They talked and he told her all about what he did in Denver, and she told him how much she'd cried the last night after watching the love story, and he laughed at her but then felt bad and kissed her right there in the line. Some of the people near them gawked at them, and told them what a great-looking couple they were and how their love showed. Deanna blushed and buried her face into his chest, relishing the warmth. Before he put her in a cab with her large tray of drinks, he got her cell number and called it, so she could have his number too. See you at lunch, baby, he told her, then closed the door to the cab and watched her ride away with a huge smile on her face.
Cole.
Cole had decided that he wasn't going to wait to ask Deanna on the date he'd been planning. He was pretty sure she'd say yes, but he didn't want to get too cocky about it. Cole showed up at her office with a crystal vase full of red roses for her desk, which he found was too tiny, and the flowers took up too much space, so she sat them on an empty table in the little office she shared with Jacob and some other guy. Jacob came up to Cole and shook his hand. Hey there, Cole. Deanna told me all about the mix-up. Glad to see you aren't the jerk we thought you were. Cole gave him a smile and patted him on the back. Thanks for being there for her, Jacob. I feel awful about what I put her through. She's lucky to have a friend like you. Deanna slipped her coat on and grabbed Cole by the hand. Let's get going. I'm starving. I haven't eaten hardly at all for the last 5 days. Sure, baby. Can we stop by your boss's office? I want to ask him if you can take a long lunch so I can make it up to you, he said. She led him to his office and knocked. Come in, he said. Deanna opened the door. Hey boss, this man here would like to ask you something. She gestured to Cole. This is. Her boss had jumped up and was crossing the room with his hand extended. Oh, I know who this man is. A pleasure to meet you, Cole. Cole shook his hand and smiled. Nice to meet you too. I was wondering if I could keep Deanna for a long lunch. I kind of put her through hell the last few days and need to make it up to her. Hell, Deanna, take the rest of the day off if you want to, her boss told her. Her eyes went wide. Really? He nodded and she jumped up and down. Thanks. The two took off, and she leaned into him as they made their way to the elevator. Is that okay with you, Cole? I mean, can you take the rest of the day off? I can for you, baby, he said and kissed the top of her head. Cole whisked her away to eat lunch at the Four Seasons, where she ordered a filet mignon that melted in her mouth. The day had turned around, and she was feeling as if she was on a cloud instead of sitting in the middle of the fanciest restaurant she'd ever been in. Cole took her hand across the table and smiled at her. Deanna, I wanted to ask you something. You see, from the moment I saw you, I knew you were someone special. I've been planning an exceptional date for you since you gave me your phone number. I'd like to take you to Rome this weekend. Rome? Like the country? She asked in surprise. He smiled and nodded. Yes, like the country. OMG, Cole. Yes. Of course I'd love to. She squeezed his hand and smiled. You started planning that all the way back then? When were you going to ask me? Technically, about now. But I wasn't going to be talking to you in the meantime. That was a horrible mistake. Just to let you know, I don't plan on letting a single day go by that I don't talk to you on the phone or see you in person. In person being the one I mostly plan on. Deanna blushed. You want to see me every day, Cole. That's so sweet. You're so sweet, he said, then stroked her cheek. I am. She shook her head. No, you are. We can both be sweet, he said with a laugh. If you're finished, we can get the hell out of here and go back to my place. Her eyebrows raised and she nodded. I'm ready when you are.
Deanna.
After a quick stop at her place to grab some clothes, because Cole had insisted she'd be spending the night with him, and many nights after that, they arrived at his apartment. Deanna ran her hand over the soft leather of the overstuffed sofa in his large living room. The familiar scent of him, clean and faintly musky, wrapped around her. She had thought she'd never see this place again, and now that she was here, her heart fluttered wildly. Cole was already loosening his tie, his eyes never leaving hers. She kicked off her heels as he reached for her hand and led her toward the bedroom. Once inside, he turned and caught her in his arms. His mouth claimed hers in a kiss that made her knees weak, hungry and desperate but filled with something tender too. Her hands found the buttons of his shirt, and his fingers mirrored her movements. The sound of fabric sliding to the floor filled the room, followed by the soft hitch of breath as skin met skin. He kissed her deeply, his hands roaming over her back, her shoulders, her waist. Every touch seemed to say what neither of them could put into words, that the fear, the waiting, the distance were finally over. When his lips trailed down her neck and across her collarbone, she gasped softly, clutching at his shoulders for balance. The sensation made her tremble, a rush of emotion flooding through her. Cole, she breathed, her voice barely audible. He lifted his head, his gaze intense. I thought I'd lost you.
You didn't, she whispered.
I'm here. Something in his expression softened, and for a moment everything slowed, their breathing, their movements, the world itself. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and his thumb lingered against her skin, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. When he kissed her again, it was slower, gentler, carrying all the emotion neither of them had dared speak aloud. She melted into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palms. He lifted her effortlessly, laying her gently on the bed. The light from the city filtered through the curtains, painting his skin in gold and shadow. She reached up, tracing his jaw, the line of his throat, memorizing every detail. I missed you, she said softly. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You'll never have to miss me again. The night unfolded between them like a promise, soft, unhurried, filled with whispered words and quiet laughter. By the time they drifted off to sleep, tangled in each other's arms, the weight of the past few days had finally lifted. For the first time in what felt like forever, they both dreamed in peace.
Cole.
The thing in Cole's pocket was nearly burning a hole in it, as he and Deanna ended the trip to Rome that he'd extended to a week instead of just the weekend. He knew it was early in the relationship to be doing it, but when he knew something was right, he didn't mess around. One never knew how much time they truly had left, and he was not going to miss out on every second he could have with this woman. He wanted her with him always. He never got tired of talking to her or listening to her. Deanna was fascinating and smart, and she would soon be his in name if she said yes to what he was about to ask her, as they gazed at the Colosseum in Rome just as the sun was setting. Her back leaned against his chest as his arms wrapped around her, holding her to him in a warm embrace. She was perfect, and he thanked the Lord above he'd run into her in that coffee shop that fateful day. One day he'd be holding her just like that, as her stomach was round with their child. One day far past that day, he'd be holding her just like that when they were old and gray and her body was frail. He couldn't wait for all the days and nights he'd have with her, if she'd just say yes. Cole turned her in his arms as the last rays of sun were leaving the sky. She gazed up at him, and he kissed the tip of her cute little nose. "Thanks for this, Cole. I never imagined anything like this happening to me." She ran her hand over his stubble cheek. "Thank you for coming into my life, Deanna," he said, then took her hand and kissed it. He wanted to stand right there and hold her like that for eternity, but that would stop all the other great stuff they could do, so he let her out of his arms and knelt in front of her, keeping her hand in his. Deanna's eyes went wide and she stopped breathing. "Cole, what?" "Shish." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled the little black box full of the monster-sized diamond ring he'd bought while they were still in New York. It had been hell waiting until the last day of their mini-vacation to give it to her and ask her the question he knew from the moment he'd knocked all that coffee out of her hands that he'd be asking her. He had no idea he'd feel compelled to ask her so soon after meeting her, but there he was on one knee and pulling the ring out. Cole had to steady his shaking hand, as he knew there was a chance she'd tell him it was too soon. "Deanna, since the day God brought you to me, I knew one day I would ask this question. I know it's been less than a month, and I know it may seem sudden, but baby, when you know, and I know." He hesitated, as her free hand covered her mouth and a tear rolled over her cheek. Cole had to swallow hard to knock the knot that had formed in his throat out, so he could continue. "Deanna Williams, will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?"
Deanna.
In front of the Colosseum in Rome, Deanna stood looking down at Cole, a man she'd only known less than a month. He was on one knee and held a giant diamond ring in one hand and her hand in the other. She was shaking her head as she must be dreaming, and he was smiling up at her after just having asked her to marry him. Deanna knew what she was going to say, but the word was stuck inside her, trapped by her brain that said it was way too soon for this. His eyes twinkled at her, waiting for her answer, and finally she managed to get it out. "Yes." "You had me scared there for a minute, Deanna," he said as he took the ring out of the box and pushed it onto her finger. She held it up and marveled at how gorgeous it was and heavy as well. "Cole, it's beyond anything I could have ever imagined." He stood and pulled her into his strong arms and kissed her gently. "Thank you, Deanna. You have made me happier than I could have ever imagined." He smiled and kissed her again. His kiss took her breath away, and she was panting when he finally released her. "When should we get married, Cole?" "I'm thinking a quick stop in Vegas on the way home." "What do you think about that?" he asked. Her eyes went wide. "Wow. So when we get back home, I'll be Mrs. Cole Waters." "Wow. So you're agreeing then?" "Vegas it is," he asked again to be sure. "If you want a big wedding, we can do that if you want that kind of thing." She shook her head. "No. I just want to be your wife. I don't need a fancy wedding that will take forever to plan. I just want to be yours, Cole." Cole ran his arm around her and led her back to the waiting car that would take them to their hotel room. "Everyone back home will be more than shocked, and I can't wait to see everyone's faces when we give them the news."
Cole.
What started so quickly continued that way, and after 10 years of marriage, Deanna was having their third child. Cole was busy packing the other two children's clothes. Tanner, their oldest son, was 9. They got pregnant right after getting married. They figured, why not keep up the hurry-up thing they had going? Jenna was 6, and she was eager to see the new baby brother she'd be meeting shortly as they were taking her mother to the hospital to have the baby. The whole family was beyond excited, as it had seemed for a long time that it would just be the two kids as no more came. Then suddenly Deanna was pregnant again, and Cole was ecstatic with the news. The older siblings were as well. Cole nearly tripped over their sheepdog, Rags, as he tried to gather the suitcases for his wife and help her to the car. The couple had moved out of New York City and upstate to a mansion more suitable for raising a family. Deanna gripped his hand. "Wait. A contraction is coming on strong, and I can't walk." Cole ran his arm around her back to help her, but she was groaning and looking pale. "You okay, honey?" She did her breathing exercises as her son, Tanner, looked at her. "Mom, you okay?" Jenna answered for her mother, "She's fine. It's just a contraction, after all." Deanna's face returned to normal, and she smiled at her daughter. "Thanks, Jenna. Now let's get to the hospital and get this kid out into the world and the heck out of me." A mere 7 hours later, Cole was holding his newborn son, Tyler. He thought he could never have asked for anything better.
Deanna.
The years had passed far too quickly for Deanna. The children were grown, and Cole and she were left alone in the huge mansion. She lay in bed next to her husband. Gray hairs had replaced some of the blonde and brown of their hair, and tiny wrinkles etched their skin, but their love remained as strong as the day it started. She felt his hand cover hers as they lay in silence. His lips touched her cheek. "I love you, Deanna." Tears fell from her eyes as she was so thankful for the life the man next to her had given her. Being married to him had her able to see the world and take their children on adventures that would never have happened if it wasn't for Cole. "I love you, Cole." Deanna's hand rested on his stomach, tracing the familiar lines of muscle that time hadn't managed to erase. Even after all these years, he was still a handsome devil. He turned to her with a smile and brushed his fingers over her shoulder. "And you, Deanna Waters, are as beautiful as the day I married you." Her cheeks warmed. After all this time, his words still made her blush. He touched her lips lightly with his fingertip, then leaned in to kiss her. The moment their mouths met, her breath caught. His kisses still had the power to make her heart race. She wrapped her arms around him, drawing him closer, her pulse quickening as their bodies aligned. With no one around to interrupt them, they'd grown comfortable in their quiet freedom. Two souls who'd shared a lifetime and still found magic in each other's touch. Cole's movements were slow, deliberate, filled with the kind of passion that only years of love could refine. He held her as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever known, their rhythm steady and familiar, a language they both spoke fluently. Deanna's fingers slid up his arms, feeling the strength that hadn't faded. Her breath hitched as emotion and pleasure mingled. It wasn't just desire, it was connection, history, devotion. He kissed her neck, his voice rough with feeling. "I love you, Deanna. Always." Her reply came as a whisper against his ear. "Always." When they finally lay together in the soft stillness, his hand found hers. He turned and kissed her cheek. "Will this ever get old, sweetheart?" She smiled, eyes closed, her heart full. "No. I don't think it ever will." Deanna turned to look at her husband. She stroked his cheek, thick with stubble, and smiled at him. He ran his hand through her hair and smiled back. "You have never let me down. In all these years, you have continued to amaze me. Do you know that?" She shook her head. "I don't see how. I'm just your average wife and mother." "You're so much more than that." Cole kissed her cheek again. "You've accomplished so much, Deanna. And you're about to get your very first book published, too." "What if it bombs?" she asked with a groan. "How could it? It's our love story after all," he said with a smile. "But what if people hate it?" She looked as if she might cry, and it was more than Cole could take. He laughed and pulled her into his arms and hugged her tight. "Don't you worry about it. You did a fantastic job, just like you do with everything. Now get some rest, and in the morning, you'll feel much better about things." Cole kissed the top of her head, and they both fell fast asleep.
Deanna.
A scream rang throughout the house as Deanna ran through it, on her way to find Cole. "You won't believe it." He came out of his office to see what had her in such a state. "Believe what?" She was jumping up and down and holding a piece of paper. "I just got the best news. 2 things. I can't believe it." Cole grabbed her by her narrow shoulders to get her to stop hopping around like a kangaroo. "Deanna Waters, what is it?" She took in a deep breath. "Okay, first things first, 'cause you're going to freak, and I know you are. You're definitely freaking me out. Just get on with it, woman. Jenna is going to have a baby. We're going to be grandparents, Cole." She tried to jump up and down again, but Cole's firm hands had her grounded. Oh my! Our baby is having a baby? He frowned. She's 26, Cole. Hardly a baby, and she's been married 3 years for heaven's sakes. Deanna laughed. But she's my little girl. It seems like only yesterday that I walked her down that aisle. Okay, what's the other news? He looked at her, and she could tell he wanted to mourn the loss of his little girl as she turned into a mommy herself, but she had to tell him her other news. My book about us is on the New York Times bestseller list, and I've been invited to the Ellen Show to talk about it, she shouted, and busted out of his hold and danced around the kitchen. You're going to be on television? He asked. You're going to talk about our love story on national television? Yep. The set is right in New York City. Right where it all began for us, Cole. I'm going to tell the world how my handsome billionaire and I found each other. I can't wait. Her face formed a frown. Oh. What will I wear? And how will I fix my hair? Cole grabbed her up in his arms and kissed her with passion. I am so proud of you, Deanna. So very proud. Thanks. It's all because of you, Cole. You've made my life a fairy tale, and now everyone gets to know how happy you made me. She kissed his cheek. And how happy you've made me, sweetheart. He kissed her again, and started dancing her out of the kitchen and down the long hallway. She giggled, as he spun her around and around to music he was humming. Where are you taking me, may I ask? To the place where all the beautiful memories are made, dear wife. He placed a kiss on her nose, making her giggle again. I see. So, we're celebrating the news then? She found him turning into their bedroom. Yes, the fact that I'm married to a best-selling author is a big deal to me. How about yourself? He moved her to the side of the bed. Cole pushed the straps of her sundress off her narrow shoulders as she looked up at him with love in her eyes. Randy, huh? I suppose I am feeling a bit that way. But as I have you for a husband, I'm pretty much always up for a little romp in the hay with you. He smiled and brushed his lips against her bare shoulder, his hand tracing a slow path down her arm. You have the softest skin, Deanna. She unbuttoned his shirt and ran her palms over his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin. And you still have the hardest abs in town, she teased, her eyes glinting with mischief. He chuckled, tugging gently at the fabric of her dress until it slipped to the floor. His gaze swept over her with reverence. You're perfect, he murmured. She laughed softly, her fingers playing at the waistband of his jeans before he helped her out of the rest of her clothes. For a heartbeat, they simply stood there, taking each other in, years of distance melting away in a single look. Cole brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, You smell like heaven. Just a little vanilla perfume I bought the other day, she said with a shy smile. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching as their breathing fell into rhythm. I missed you, he said against her lips. Then show me, she whispered. He lifted her into his arms and carried her to the bed. What followed wasn't hurried or wild, it was slow, full of longing and unspoken promises. Each touch said what words could not, I never stopped loving you. When they finally lay side by side, the afternoon light spilling across the sheets, Cole brushed his fingers along her jaw. Years have passed, he murmured, but it still feels like the first time I saw you. Deanna smiled, resting her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. That's because love like this doesn't fade, Cole. It only grows stronger. He kissed the top of her head and closed his eyes, holding her close, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together.
The end. Sneak peek for Billionaire's Secret Attraction. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Billionaire's Flame by Michelle Love. Now please listen to a sneak peek for Billionaire's Secret Attraction by Michelle Love. Madison.
There is a sea of men in dark tailored suits. A sea of men that I now have to walk through. We, my dear friend Kim and I, arrive at the new art gallery promptly at 1 o'clock. She is simply punctual like that. With our high heels clicking and our perfume wafting, she and I walk up the steps in front of the building. The men are all ages, all handsome, and all very rich. They nod in appreciation as we walk by, smiling, winking, nodding their heads. Kim smiles a wide, mischievous smile. She's relishing it. Loving it. And she's used to it, the admiring gazes. She's come to expect them always. And why wouldn't they look? She's tall, leggy, blonde, and you can just feel the confidence radiating off of her. Today she's wearing a sequin, body-hugging dress. One that shows off all her curves. She is a goddess. I look down at my dress and tug at the hem one more time. I too had dressed up. For fun. To make myself feel good. But unlike him, I am not here for the attention. I'm here because she asked me to come to this event, the opening of a new gallery owned by one of her clients. I wasn't in the market for a new painting or anything like that. But I thought the event had the potential to be an excellent networking opportunity. The art world and the music world were closely intertwined after all. Or so I thought. One look around, and I can tell this isn't my usual scene. In any case, I decide to make the most of it. Plus, Kim is visiting from Chicago. She'd moved out there several years ago for work. She would be going home in a few days, and I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible. We go inside and immediately grab 2 glasses of champagne. My stomach growls. I'd only had coffee on the way out the door. I had practically run so that I could meet Kim here on time. I turned to her. Pastis for lunch? She doesn't hear me. She's too busy making flirty eyes at some tall, distinguished-looking gentleman with salt and pepper hair. She raises her glass as he inclines his head toward her. I roll my eyes. Then I grab her arm and start walking away, dragging her with me. I know where this will lead. She'll find someone she wants to make a night of it with, and I'll be stuck talking to his dull friend. Not today. Kim may very well be on the prowl, but I am decidedly not. Men always seem to bring trouble into my life. So I just try to keep my head down and focus on my work. We waltz through the various rooms, eyeing paintings and sculptures. Well, I'm eyeing the paintings and the sculptures. Kim is eyeing the men. And there are plenty to choose from. What's going on over there? Kim turns to me and asks. There's a crowd forming in the room next to us. We walk over to see what the commotion is all about. One piece in particular seems to be drawing a lot of attention. People are starting to bid on it and fight over it. An impromptu art auction springs up right there in the middle of the room. Kim and I stand back to take in the action. She's whispering to me, saying something or other. But I'm sucked into the painting. It's stunning. A tempestuous swirl of bold reds and calming yellows. Splashes of orange. It was as if the sun had burst and splattered itself onto the canvas. The piece is causing quite a stir. And rightfully so. If I had the money, I'd be making a play for it myself. Don't look now, Kim whispers to me, leaning in closer. But there is a very cute stranger off to your left. I start to roll my eyes. But then she adds, and he seems to be quite taken with you. This piques my interest. I glance to my left and immediately see who she's talking about. I don't know how I missed him, even if I wasn't exactly looking. He's the very epitome of tall, dark, and handsome. And sure enough, he is looking right at me. His silent stare makes the air thin and hard to breathe. My pulse quickens, and I can feel the color spring into my cheeks. His hair is curly, dark, and hits just at the nape of his neck. His eyes are the shade of blue that looks as if it will freeze you and melt you all at the same time. His jawline is strong, absolute perfection. It's so hard to take my eyes off his beautiful face, but I quickly turn away. I feel a little out of breath, like I had just gotten off some thrill ride at an amusement park. I try, with great effort, to direct my attention back to the painting. Kim raises an eyebrow at me. You're not going to go over there? I shake my head, unable to speak for the moment. I start to tell myself that I'm imagining the whole thing. That he's looking at someone behind me instead. There are plenty of other women there, after all. And it seems as though he has more than one new fan because I'm not the only one staring. I take another glance in his direction. This time, the corners of his mouth turn up slightly, just barely showing the hint of a dimple. He is definitely looking at me. And ignoring his fan club for the moment. My belly does a flip-flop. The next thing I know, Kim starts to drag me off in the opposite direction. There's Maxim, she says. Maxim is her client and owner of the gallery. He smiles when he sees her and waves us over. Come on, she says. I'll introduce you to him. As we walk off, I decide to steal one more glance over my shoulder. I can't help it. I search the room looking for my handsome stranger. But he's gone.
Caleb.
I'd lost her. I whip my head around frantically, trying to spot her in the crowd, but she's nowhere around. A group of chatty older men had walked between us, obstructing my view. And then she just disappeared. I frown. What are you looking for? I turn toward Rob, one of my oldest friends and now business partner. Did you see that woman? I ask. He laughs. There are lots of women here. He follows a curvy redhead with his eyes, as if to illustrate his point. I shake my head. Never mind. I can't let it go, though. She was exquisite. The most breathtaking woman I've ever seen. I couldn't get my eyes off of her. I hoped no one had noticed. I walk on into the next room with Rob. I keep an eye out and chide myself for not saying anything to my mystery woman earlier. I try to concentrate on what I'm here to do, but it's proving difficult. I was there at the art gallery with my partners. We had just moved our firm into new offices and thought some new artwork would be a good way to snazz up the place. Plus, we figured this was a good way to work on getting some new accounts. Not that we needed any new accounts. We were doing extremely well. The rest of the financial world had taken to calling us the Rat Pack. RAT was an acronym for Retired at 30. And the way we were going, we could likely retire before that. Brad, my other partner and good friend, walks up to me. You want to see that show tomorrow? The one everyone's raving about? I can't. I've got dinner with Bruce. Bruce was our mentor. And we each had a standing one-on-one dinner date with him, as well as a group lunch once every month. We're standing off in the corner of the room, talking to some man that Rob knows. I glance over and see out of the corner of my eye the tall blonde that my mystery woman was with earlier. No sign of my mystery woman, though. I nudge Brad. Hey, I say, pointing to the tall blonde. Do you know her? No. But she's pretty attractive. Why? Who is she? I sigh. Never mind. I could just go up and introduce myself, and then politely ask about her friend. But that would just get people talking. As it were, I already had a few women tailing me through the gallery, magically appearing wherever I was standing. At the far end of the gallery, Brad begins making our final selections and arranging payment and delivery. We were all happy with the pieces he'd chosen, so we let him handle the details. I glance down at my watch. It's 3 o'clock and this thing is winding down. The car is waiting out front, Brad says to me when he finishes with the gallery owner. I'm just going to say bye. I'll meet you guys outside. I am beyond ready to go, and so I make my way out front first. I stand at the top of the steps and take the time to light a cigarette while waiting for the rest of my group. I had quit last month for the 5th time. But it wasn't taking. That's when I see her. My mystery woman. She's getting into the back of sleek black Lincoln, her tall friend right behind her. I have the overwhelming urge to call out to her, but I realize I don't know her name. Still, my eyes are transfixed on her. The car door slams and the wheels start to move. In the exact moment the Lincoln rolls by, my mystery woman looks up. It's just a quick glance, but our eyes meet through the car window. And then she's gone. Again. I'd lost her for the second time. I arrive at the restaurant at 7 o'clock on the dot. I sit down at the table and order a glass of single malt while I wait for Bruce. 20 minutes and another scotch later, I glance at my watch. I make an annoyed sound and tap my fingers on the table. I'm just about to go ahead and order without him. A minute or so after I order my appetizer, Bruce comes walking up to the table and sits. "You're late," I say, not even making an effort to hide my annoyance. He gives a dismissive wave of his hand. "Only 20 minutes, he replies. "No big deal. Relax." "So, how was the opening?" I smile, remembering my mystery woman, and then fix my face when he gives me a curious look. "The usual," I reply. "Pretty boring, actually. Got some nice pieces, though. Should liven the place up a little." "Sounds good. Okay. What have you got for me?" I reach into my briefcase and pull out my leather-bound notebook and a stack of spreadsheets. We spend the next 30 minutes going over my specific goals for the quarter. After these strategy sessions, Bruce would check in with me weekly, usually on Saturday afternoons. I'd update him on the progress of specific action items. Bruce can be a jerk at times, but he knows what he's doing. And he knows how to keep me on track with whatever it is I am trying to achieve. He takes the time to teach. The guys and I are lucky to have him. With the projections done, we relax and take the time to enjoy our meal. I put my notebook away into my briefcase as our entrees arrive at the table. The server sets a sirloin steak, medium rare, with a side of steamed vegetables in front of me. Immediately, I begin to salivate. "Be right back. I'm going to take a piss," Bruce says as he gets up from the table. I shrug and take another bite of my steak. I'm happily engrossed in my meal when something else grabs my attention. It's the scent that makes me look up from my plate. Perfume. Sweet, spicy, and faintly herbal. It isn't the scent itself, but the fact that the scent is familiar to me. I try to rack my brain to remember where I know it from. And then, like magic, she enters into my view. She walks into the restaurant with the same cougar friend she was with the previous day at the art gallery. The hostess walks them past my table and sits them down in the opposite corner near the kitchen. It takes a little while before I can catch her eye. She turns, she must have felt my eyes on her, and she glances at me briefly. I can see the recognition register in her face. Then, in a flash, she turns back to her friend. I feel that familiar movement in my slacks again, and I shift uncomfortably in my seat. I want to go over there, but Bruce would soon be on his way back from the restroom. I can never be sure how he'll act in situations like this. In general, I make it a point to keep anyone I'm interested in far away from him. If he knows I have my eye on this particular woman, he'll be likely to approach her and say something that will embarrass me, no doubt. Or worse, he'll make a play for her himself. I can't have that. So I force my attention back to my steak and try to pretend she isn't there. I still take a glance here and there, but I try not to be obvious about it. Now I have a dilemma. I don't want my mystery woman to slip away again, but I don't want to put her on Bruce's radar either. The server comes over to remove our plates, interrupting my train of thought. Bruce asks him for the check. "Right away, sir," he says. I have to think fast. "I'd like to place a separate order to go if that's okay," I say to the server just before he turns away. "Sure. What would you like, sir?" "A steak salad, please." Ben raises his eyebrow at me. "For my lunch tomorrow," I explain. "Don't feel like cooking." He shrugs. "Expensive lunch." The server returns a little while later with my salad, packaged neatly in a brown paper bag. I hand him my black card. Ben seems distracted by something on his phone, so I seize my opportunity. I lean toward the server and speak to him in a low voice. "Please add whatever the ladies at the far table order to my tab." I motion toward their table, and then I slip a business card from my wallet and hand it to him. "And please give this to the young woman in the black dress." The server smiles and gives me a slight nod. "I'll take care of it, sir." Ben looks up from his phone. "You ready?" I nod. We get up and start walking toward the front door. I take one last, longing look at my mystery woman. She's engrossed in conversation with her friend. I try to will her to look up, but she doesn't. The door to the restaurant closes behind me. All that's left for me to do is to hope that she'll actually call.
Madison.
I don't even notice him when I walk in. But I feel his eyes on me. Hot and prickly, like Superman with his heat vision. Kim excuses herself just after our appetizers arrive. I start to dig into my salad, not wanting to wait for her to get back. It's a heavenly mix of fresh ripe peaches, vine beans, cucumber, red onion, goat milk feta, and a harissa vinaigrette. Cool, crisp, and delicious. Then all of a sudden, heat. A warming sensation, traveling up my arm, up my neck, and into my face. I look over my shoulder, feeling suddenly very exposed. And there he is. The handsome stranger. Our eyes meet. And just like that, the rest of the room fades away. He stops chewing. Then he puts his knife and fork down next to his plate and leans all the way back in his chair. And then he just lets his baby blue eyes wash over me. For the longest minute, I just stare at his face. My gaze travels from his piercing eyes down to his lips. In that very moment, he bites it, pulling his bottom lip between his teeth. A slow smile spreads across his face, and his dimples are back in full force. Lickable dimples. My breath catches. It's a look that says only one thing. We both know I can make you faint with pleasure. Kim returns to the table, and I quickly shift my attention back to my salad. For whatever reason, I don't want her to know that my handsome stranger is here in the restaurant with us. She'll probably just end up embarrassing me. Or trying to take him for herself. The whole time we eat, I force myself to keep my eyes on her. But my mind keeps wandering to him. "I'll get it," Kim says when the server arrives with the check. She starts to pull out her credit card. "No need, ma'am," says the server, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "The bill has already been paid." "By whom?" "The gentleman at the far table." We both turn to look in the direction the server is pointing, but there's no one there. "That's funny," he says. "He was there a minute or two ago." The server then leans in toward me and whispers, "He asked me to give you this, madam." He proceeds to place a card in my hand. I blush and look down at it. It's an excellent quality. Clean design, heavy cardstock, and embossed lettering. Caleb L. Jones, Financial Services, it reads. I try to keep a neutral facial expression. I put the card down when Kim gives me a questioning look. I shrug. "Guess we'll never know," I say. "Free meal?" "We'll chalk that one up to a win." It's almost 10 when I make it back to my apartment. It had been a long day, and all I want now is a nice hot shower before bed. I pause, looking at my phone on the kitchen counter. It isn't too late yet. Maybe my handsome stranger is still awake. Over the next 5 minutes, I wrestle with the decision to call him or not. Finally, I grab my purse and begin looking for his card. It isn't at the top of my bag where it should have been, and after a good minute of rummaging, I still haven't found it. I turn my purse over and frantically dump the contents of my bag out onto my bed. No card. I realize then that I'd left my handsome stranger's card at the restaurant. I think briefly about calling the restaurant, and after a minute of deliberation, I do just that. Nothing. They must have thrown it away when the table was being cleared, the person on the other line had said. I hang up and sink into my bed, suddenly very moody. I stay up for another hour, wondering how I let my handsome stranger slip right through my fingers yet again.
Caleb.
I slam the phone down hard. Probably much harder than I need to. This particular client, the one I'm on the phone with, is a total nightmare. I don't want to lose the account though, so I have no choice but to make nice.
The others had since long left the building. I was in the office by myself. I look down at my watch and sigh. It was past time to pack it in. I'm still agitated though, and I need to blow off some steam. Rather than reach for a cigarette or the bottle of scotch I keep in my bottom desk drawer, I change into my sweats. The gym is a short walk from my new office. I walk through the front door and give a nod to the gym owner, who is in the corner sweeping. He nods right back and smiles at me. The usual. I nod and smile. The usual, I reply. I'm a regular at this place. And my late-night sessions with the punching bag are starting to become the thing of legends. Sometimes the owner, Gus, would leave me there and let me lock up. I wrap up my wrists tightly, and then I punch the bag for a good hour. I don't bother to hit the showers before I leave, because my penthouse is close by. The cool night air hits my skin as I exit the gym. I pull the hood of my sweatshirt up over my head. I'm feeling so much better, but then my phone starts to buzz with another text message. It's from the pain-in-the-ass client, and he's threatening to ruin my newfound good mood. I'm not paying attention to where I'm going. I'm so lost in the phone. I don't see until it's too late, and I run smack into someone on the street. Papers and things go flying all over the sidewalk. Quickly, I bend down to help pick them up. It isn't until our hands touch that I realize what's happening. I look up, and all of a sudden, it seems as though the entire world starts moving in slow motion. My mystery woman, and just when I was beginning to think I'd never see her again. She smiles. Well, if it isn't my guardian angel. Her voice is low and husky and music to my ears. I chuckle at this and shake my head. No guardian. Certainly no angel. She smiles and nods, stuffing the last of her things into her purse. I reach out my hand to help her stand up. We've got to stop running into each other like this, I say. When she doesn't answer, I add, I was hoping I'd hear from you. Yeah, she starts. I misplaced your business card. I think I left it at the restaurant. I raise my eyebrow at her. Her excuse is beyond typical, and I expected a little more from her. Can't she come up with something better? But then I decide to give her the benefit of the doubt and see if maybe I do have a shot after all. Where are you heading now? I was actually just getting ready to hail a cab. Let me get one for you, I say, and stick my hand out to flag one down for her. I look down at my sweats and grimace. I was hardly presentable, hardly in any condition to even be thinking about taking this woman out. But this is my mystery woman, and I'm not about to let her get away again. I put my hand down and turn to her. Have you had dinner yet? She nods and looks away. Yes. Dessert? She looks at me and shakes her head. Skipping dessert tonight. I can't tell if she's being coy or if she's just not that into me. Okay, how about a drink then? There's a place right up the block. It's only a short walk from here. She hesitates before answering, looking around and seeming at a loss for words. My heart sinks. I'm convinced she's going to say no. But then she agrees. Okay, she says finally. I can't help the silly smile that comes and splits my face in two. I clap my hands together. Great. I grab her things, and we take the short walk up the block to the little bar. What's your name? I ask her on the way there. Madison. She smiles and holds her hand out toward me, and I shake it. Madison, I say, her name rolling off my lips like sweet honey. I'm Cal. We get to the bar a few minutes later. The place is packed, much to my chagrin. I search the floor, and then find 2 empty seats in the corner. I guide Madison over to that corner and sit her down. What would you like? What are you having? What I always have. Scotch. Single malt. Neat. Then I'll have a scotch. Single malt. Neat. I smile. I'm already starting to like this girl. I'll be right back, I say. Don't go anywhere. I go over to the bar and order the 2 scotches. The best you have, I instruct the bartender. He comes back with 2 glasses and shows me a bottle of the Macallan 18-year. I nod. That would do. I bring the 2 drinks back to the table and set hers in front of her. She doesn't drink it right away. She sits and stirs it with her finger, eyes on me the whole time. I take a sip of mine and try not to wrinkle my brow at her. Did she not drink? Why wouldn't you say so? So what do you do? I ask, attempting to start a conversation. I work in the recording industry. Doing what? I have a record label. She still hasn't touched her drink. She seems to be staring at something fascinating on her left hand. Is that what you've always wanted to do? She smiles and then, to my relief, finally picks up her glass and takes a sip. No. I wanted to be a nurse. I started nursing school and everything. So what happened with that? Things change, you know. I nod at this, not able to take my eyes off her. My turn, she says. Where are you from? Is it that obvious that I'm not from around here? Painfully. I'm from the Midwest originally, Illinois. Went to school out there, but my parent moved out here to Jersey a while ago. And you? You're a native New Yorker, I'm guessing. She takes another sip. You guess correctly. What did you study in school? Study? I laugh. Honestly, most of it was a blur. I don't remember much studying going on. I do remember being proud of having learned how to sew. Finally, I get a laugh out of her and the mood instantly lightens. I reach out to touch her fingers and feel a jolt of electricity when her skin touches mine. Some guy that had been watching us from the far corner comes over at that moment. He says hello to Madison, completely ignoring the fact that I'm sitting there. He's drunk. Messy drunk. Slurring his speech drunk. She tries to wave him away, but he stays put. I can feel the trouble about to start. I would get Madison out of here and continue this another time, but he's blocking the direction of the entrance. The only way to go is through him. I take a deep breath and ready myself. Then I place my hand firmly on his arm. Leave her alone, I say, expecting him to just walk away. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he reaches out to punch me right in the face.
End of sneak peek for Billionaire's Secret Attraction, a billionaire romance. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. It helps more than you know.